This boy carried a deadly burden. When the guillotine rose, he had to cut. That was his job at just 13 years old. His name was Leon von Marbus, the slayer of his own bloodline, the one who acted as executor of his own family. Thus, Leon became the patriarch of the family at 14 years old. But something strange happened when he found the legendary book, the Necronomicon, a relic passed down through generations, keeping the secret of the necromancers. That very book began to speak inside his head. Surprised, he wonders what that was, a telepathic message. Looking around, he asks who he's speaking with at that moment. Telling him not to be afraid, the voice claims it is not a threat. Then a large magic circle forms, and a figure appears out of nowhere. Without showing fear, he faces the new presence with a serious gaze. Before him, a giant lion-like creature emerges. He then asks what this place is, seeming a bit confused by it all. Asking about his father, the creature wants to know if he wasn't warned. Confirming the name rune, the creature says the mana link was with a snarl. It laments that his nature was too good for a lord. Next, it asks who was responsible for the final blow to his father. He then begins to answer, referring to the man who took his father's life. With his back turned, Leon reveals it was him, his own son, who was responsible. Roaring with great fury, the creature throws the boy back with force. Composing himself, he hears the creature say it will ask only one more time. Then it asks if he was the one who killed its sworn master. Without hesitation, he simply replies, yes, that's exactly what happened. He confirms once more that he was his own father's killer. With a menacing stare, the creature prepares to attack. Charging with its mouth open, the creature lunges at the boy in a fury. He stands his ground, enduring the crushing pressure around him. A quick flash shows the boy's hand slicing through the guillotine's rope. Immediately after, the image reveals the horrific consequence of that very act. The creature tries to explain, saying his senses have been stolen from him. He replies that it's not the truth and he knows it. Hearing this, the creature falls silent for a moment. Just watching him, setting its despair aside, it questions the darkness it feels inside him. It then wonders how a child can possess such magical power. His footsteps into a puddle, sending ripples across the surface of the liquid. Rising up on a platform, he stares back at the creature, his gaze filled with power. The creature glares at the boy, thinking how absurd this all was. Sensing his potential, it realizes he could even surpass his own ancestor. Then, clearing its throat, the creature composes itself after the scene. He introduces himself as Marba, a demon from hell. He explains that he turned his back on his own realm to live among humans. As a longtime friend of Wellen, he was the source of their necromancy. Leon says he knows of him from the stories he's heard about the past. He recalls that Marba taught the forbidden art of necromancy to his ancestor. Confirming the story, Marba says he is now bound to the Necronomicon forever. He mentions the Black Lion, saying the founder believed in their necromancy. Listening intently, Marba simply stares at the young lord without a word. Leon then begins to ask him an important question about the past. He asks directly why Marbus decided to abandon them all in the end. Questioning the idea, Marbus asks what made him think such a thing. Explaining his point, he says that no one else ever became a great necromancer. He stares back at the creature, asking if that isn't a sign. Then Marbus turns and warns that he's going to make one thing very clear. He prepares to explain the real reason they are unable to use necromancy. Marbus reveals the reason. They are too weak to offer a proper vessel. He explains that none of them could even compare to Welland's talent. Calling it an omen, he warns that it's a sign of their decline. Leon falls silent for a moment, seeming to process the information. He says he'll take his word for it, facing Marba, who senses his acceptance. He then says it's an immutable law that the weak suffer in war. Marbus then asks if that's how he accepted his own father's death. He replies that it makes no difference, that it was nothing special. Turning slightly, he says that, having said that, there is one more thing. He says that unless Marbus has abandoned them, he has a favor to ask. Marbus questions the word favor, baring his teeth as he rejects the offer. Explaining the difference, he says that with demons you make pacts or deals. Correcting himself, he proposes a pact for the power of necromancy. Hearing the new proposal, the creature simply stares at him in complete silence. He then asks if Marbus has the means to grant him this power. Marbus retorts that a boy shouldn't question him and asks what he has to offer. He then asks if the boy considers himself worthy of so much power. He answers yes, stating that a demon wouldn't bother speaking to someone without talent. That's because normal people hallucinate and die when they encounter demons. He concludes that the very fact he's still standing proves his potential. Observing the boy, Marba seems to consider his answer very carefully. He states the rule: any request made to a demon is a pact. He then adds that he believes he has something to offer in return. Seen from the side, the creature listens to the young man's proposal with a watchful eye. Suddenly, creature opens its mouth and begins to laugh loudly. Calling the proposal excellent, he agrees to make a pact with him. With the pact accepted, Leon asks what the price will be. The creature reveals a menacing smile bearing its sharp teeth. Then he reveals the price. He will demand every facet of his very being. Hearing the condition, Leon remains silent, his face showing no surprise. With a smile, he says that's a relief since he would have given his very existence. Surprised by the response, Marbus regards the young man in a new light. The scene shifts to a large hall where the house's counselors are gathered, clearing his throat. The boy's uncle begins to address everyone present. He then clarifies that he is referring to the current patriarch, the young Lord Leon. Stating that the Lord has little authority, he questions Leon's capabilities. He then directly asks the other men if they all agree. As his uncle and closest relative, he tries to justify his position in the family. He then reveals his plan to take full control of all affairs. One of the counselors says it would be foolish to disagree given the current situation. He continues, stating they can't leave decisions in the hands of a child. Another man agrees that the uncle is the most suitable to take control, but a nobleman intervenes, reminding everyone that Leon is the direct descendant. He then stresses that there is no precedent for breaking the line of succession. Irritated, the other man shouts, questioning the validity of precedent in the face of danger. He warns that Sylvester's armies are already marching to attack them. He then warns that they will perish with their lord while he will survive. Slamming his hand on the table, the other noble shouts that he is speaking out of turn. Standing up, he says that they all owe their loyalty to the house until the end. He then declares that he will not accept the uncle usurping the heir's place. Falling to his knees, he laments how they could have been left in the clutches of that vulture. Calling it a bold opinion, the uncle leans on the table with his hand. He then acknowledges that it seems Leon has at least one loyal vassal. Asking him to be clear, the noble demands to know what he means. With a smile, the uncle says that however loyal he may be, he lacks the insight to see that it's already a done deal. Taking a step forward, he approaches the nobleman who opposed him. Calling him by name, the uncle approaches with an air of superiority. Placing a hand on his shoulder, he asks him to accept his wise counsel. His hand then begins to release a dark and dangerous energy. With a menacing look, he asks if they think their opinions matter. Feeling the pressure, the noble laments, saying that Churchill planned everything. With his hands still on him, Churchill advises him to consider his next words carefully. Turning to the others, he says, they are all there for a single purpose. According to him, the goal is to make the choice that is the lesser of two evils. He then asks his friend not to stand in the way of everyone's survival. Realizing he was a pawn, the noble begs his former lord for forgiveness. Back to their conversation, Marbus continues to stare at young Leon in silence. After a moment, Leon stares back at the creature waiting for a response from the demon. Marbus then says that everything is fine except for one important thing. Looking at the young lord, he seems to ponder the newly formed pact. He explains that his power has been reduced because of the change in contractor. According to Marbus, Leon's father had a much larger mana reserve. Leon then remembers that demons need to draw magical energy from their contractors. He then asks what Marba wants him to do about it. The creature then snaps its fingers, saying they need to conserve mana for now. Before Leon, the energy dissipates, leaving only the book on the floor. Transforming into a cute creature, Marbus says this form is easier to maintain. Observing the new form, Leon comments that it actually makes a lot of sense. He then says the creature is adorable enough to pass for a pet. Annoyed, Marbus threatens to bite his face off if he's called that again. Asking if he understood, the creature receives a rather mocking reply. Saying they are in agreement, Marbus warns that they need to leave right away. The creature then recalls that he wished to obtain strength to rival his ancestor. To have any chance, he advises that the best way is to follow in his footsteps. Thinking about the proposal for a moment, Leon agrees that it makes a lot of sense to him. Then Marbus reveals they will travel to his progenitor's hidden sanctuary. Warning that the journey could cost him his life, he asks if Leon will accompany him. With a doubtful expression, he asks why Marbus keeps questioning his determination. Showing its claws, the small creature seems to stir a little on the ground. Accepting the condition, Leon simply tells the little guide to lead the way. Floating through the forest, they press on led by the small demon. Arriving at the location, Leon recognizes the mystical woods of House Marbas. According to Marba, the forest can be a labyrinth for those not of the bloodline. He then remembers his father saying that only the rightful patriarch can enter. Marba explains that none of them passed the test as they lacked an essential requirement. Only those with the element of the abyss could pass through the path and enter. With a wave of its paw, the creature clears a path through the magical barrier. Reaching the entrance, Marba suggests they begin the test without further delay. Facing a staircase, they brace themselves for what comes next. Taking a step forward, he hears a voice inviting him to enter. Marba warns him that he will no longer have his help from that moment on. With a grin, the creature turns to him, baring its sharp teeth. He then offers a piece of advice, telling him to follow the Necronomicon's instructions. Holding the book, Leon observes the object, ready for the coming test. With a wide grin, Marbas says the book will guide him to power. Following the floating book, Leon walks down the stone corridor with Marbas. Suddenly, stops, noticing something strange on the path ahead. Before him, a long dark corridor stretches out into the distance. At that moment, one of the torches on the wall ignites with a flame. Blocking the passage, a group of goblins appears growling further down the hall. Turning his head, he sees that the goblins were holding a person hostage. Bound and gagged, a woman was being held prisoner by the creatures. The creatures then gather around the woman, not noticing his presence. Holding the book, he prepares to use the power of the Necronomicon. He then opens the tome to a page with a large magical symbol. There, the first secret is revealed: how to reanimate the dead in the area. He stares at the open page, analyzing the instructions of the first revealed secret. Back in the corridor, the torches continue to light the dark path. Ready to attack, the goblins continue to surround the hostage, oblivious. To begin, the book reveals that he must take the life of a being. Flipping through the pages quickly, the book seems to search for specific information. Closing the tome, he then draws his dagger, preparing for action. His gaze fixates on the enemies, analyzing the unfolding situation. Kneeling on the floor, the gagged woman breathes with great difficulty and fear. Near her, two goblins face each other and growl. Taking a step forward, he approaches the group of monsters. With a swift move, he lunges forward and strikes, causing a powerful impact. One of the larger goblins leaps, trying to hit him with a direct blow. Ducking underneath, he counterattacks, plunging the dagger into the goblin's chest. Pulling the dagger back, he prepares for the next attack. With a quick and precise move, he strikes the goblin squarely. Falling with a dull thud, the goblin is finally defeated on the ground. Wiping his dagger, he remarks that was only the first enemy. In a memory from the past, he recalls a conversation in a cemetery. His father asks him to listen very carefully to what he is about to say. He then asks which entity their house holds in the highest regard. Standing before a statue, his father reveals the answer is death itself. As a clan of necromancers, they must revere death above all else. Hearing the explanation, young Leon pauses to think for a moment. He then questions what that means, asking how one reveres death. He thought necromancers had to take lives to gain more power. With a smile, his father confirms they are feared across the continent, but he warns that this doesn't mean they should become villains. Placing a hand on his shoulder, he asks his son to promise him one thing. He asks his son to swear he will make his enemy's end a peaceful one. Snapping out of the memory, he wonders if he should keep that promise for everyone. Before him, a huge orc-like creature appears in the hallway. His face wounded, he stares down the new enemy without a hint of fear. Surrounded by goblins, he notices one of the torches has suddenly gone out. With his foot on the fallen body, he readies himself for the next attack. To keep his promise, he must aim for the cervical vertebra with precision. According to him, this is the best way to defeat an enemy painlessly. Watching everything, Marbas notes the boy landed the blow with precision. The creature wonders if it was luck or some kind of innate gift. With a smile, Marbas decides he will find out the truth soon enough. For his part, Leon believes taking down the first goblin was pure luck. He knows goblins are cunning and deceitful by nature. The other goblins close in, preparing to attack as a group. Gripping his dagger tightly, he braces for the next confrontation. In the darkness, he realizes it's hard to judge the terrain's elevation. He also notes his vision could go dark at any moment. He then remembers the torch went out with the first goblin. Taking a step, he decides to use a new combat strategy. Rushing forward, he attacks the goblin, dagger in hand. He then points the blade forward, preparing the decisive blow. Up close, the goblin roars as he keeps his gaze completely focused. With the creature's defeat, another torch in the dark hallway goes out. Attacking the next one, he strikes the monster, which falls to the ground. Turning quickly, he already prepares for the next opponent. Blocking the creature's strike, he defends against the direct attack. With a firm grip on his dagger, he prepares to counter the monster. In a swift motion, he strikes the goblin's neck with his blade. After the blow, another torch goes out, making everything darker. Noticing the darkness, his eyes begin to adjust to the gloom. Analyzing his weapon, he sees the ceremonial dagger has taken some damage. Hearing a sound, he looks up, alert to a new danger. Leaping through the air, the last goblin lunges for an attack from above. Readying his arm, he positions himself to parry the enemy's attack. With a precise strike, he knocks the goblin's weapon away. The creature then tries to grab his blade but fumbles the move. Watching from afar, Marba wonders why he abandoned his weapon. Dodging the goblin's attack, he prepares to counter. Up close, Leon faces the goblin as Marba watches in surprise. Ducking quickly, he lunges to retrieve his dagger. With his hand outstretched, he manages to grab the weapon from the floor. Wielding the dagger, he prepares for the final blow against the goblin. Stomping hard, he uses the momentum to gain more speed. Moving with agility, he prepares for the final attack on the creature. With a quick slash, he strikes the goblin directly in the chest. He then cuts off the creature's head with a precise blow. Watching the body fall, he stands still for a brief moment. Turning on his heel, he faces the rest of the area. Walking among the bodies, he continues his journey down the dark hallway. Approaching the hostage, he prepares to free her from her bonds. Still gagged, she looks at him with a hopeful gaze. In a swift move, he removes the gag from the woman's mouth, thanking him profusely. She says he saved her life. As she thanks him, the woman suddenly attacks him with a dagger. The dagger pierces his shoulder, revealing the woman's true intention. Falling backward, he stares at her, stunned by the unexpected betrayal. The blade goes through his shoulder, causing a deep and painful wound. Lifting his injured arm, he remembers his father's advice. With the dagger still in his shoulder, he lunges forward and attacks the woman. Screaming in pain, the woman falls back, wounded by his counterattack. He remembers his father warning him never to forget an important lesson. In the memory, his father says that those who deceive do not deserve a peaceful end. He then adds that they should feel the same fear as their victims. With a smirk, he says she deserves a lesson in suffering. With a cry of pain, the flame of the last torch begins to flicker. Finally, the last torch goes out, plunging the hallway into total darkness. Changing scenes, women dance and sing in a luxurious establishment. In a reserved area of the bar, people are talking and having a great time. Laughing loudly, Churchill says his time has come, and he will soon take over the house. A woman beside him agrees, saying they prefer a distinguished man. Another woman comments that using the Sylvesters was an incredible move on his part. He then admits he'll have to bow to them for a while. With a sip, he calmly drinks the liquid in his glass. Slamming his glass on the table, he says this is better than letting the house die out. Laughing, he boasts that no one can deny his flawless victory. Later, he and his allies celebrate at a lavish table. A man then asks what he plans to do with young Leon. He warns that the people are loyal to the father, making Leon difficult to discard. Pouring a drink, Churchill says he sees no need to complicate things. With a sinister smile, he reveals his plan for the young lord. He says the boy's end will be justified as dead men tell no tales. Agreeing, the man says the last time they heard from the dead was centuries ago. Pouring the drink, he fills the glass for the upcoming celebration. With a toast, Churchill and his allies celebrate his rise to power in the house. After the toast, he downs the entire bottle in one go. His allies also drink together, celebrating the new lord's imminent victory. Everyone laughs and has fun while dancers perform in the background. Elsewhere, Lord Sylvester meets with his own advisors. He then asks if the plan to subjugate House Marba is progressing. One of his men confirms that Churchill is now essentially their pawn. Calling them fools, the Lord scoffs at how they assumed he would wait. Moving a chess piece, he says this has created a convenient opening. One of the men praises his lord's strategic vision, crediting him with the success. Holding a picture of Churchill, the lord asks for the bastard's name. With a smile, he says it will be a night of unforgettable delights. Giving a direct order, he tells them to hurry the preparations immediately. Sitting in his chair, he says he can't wait to hear the screams. Back in the hallway, the last torch goes out with a puff of smoke. With a bloody dagger in hand, Leon breathes heavily after the fight. Looking at the body on the floor, he wonders if that was the last enemy. Suddenly, a bright light illuminates the entire hallway for an instant. The torches reignite, revealing that the test was not yet over. With a hand on his head, he tries to recover from the sudden brightness. Floating beside him, Marbus says what he did was incredible. Leaping toward him, Marbus shouts that he's never met a contractor like this. Eyes wide, Leon is startled by the creature coming toward him. Falling to the ground, he lies still, surprised by the little demon's reaction. Jumping on top of him, Marbus says he would survive in an orc camp. With its paws on his face, the creature squeezes him quite hard. Continues, saying he spotted the disguised monster right away. Getting up, Leon says he'd rather avoid any encounters with orcs if possible. Tilting its head, the small creature observes the young man with curiosity. He explains that he heard orcs despise humans. Annoyed, Marbus asks what made him suspect the last monster. Without answering, Leon just keeps his gaze fixed forward. He then reveals that one of the torches remained lit after the others went out. Interested, Marbus asks him to continue with his explanation. He says he noticed the torches burned with a different color. Standing in the hallway, he remembers noticing the flames. The torches in the place burned with a green flame. He says he recognized that color as the hue of the dead. For every monster he defeated, one of the torches went out. Even after killing the goblins, he noticed that not all the torches had gone out. That's how he deduced there was still one last monster left. He concludes that he couldn't advance until the last creature was dead. Sitting on the floor, he tries to recover from the wounds of the last battle. Commenting on his coolness, Marbus watches the young man with new admiration. He says he didn't expect a 14-year-old boy to notice so much. According to Marbus, it's hard to read the situation when your own life is at risk. Furthermore, it's even harder to act without hesitation in moments of danger. Even so, Leon managed to defeat all the enemies on his own. The creature then ponders that perhaps there's more to him than just mana. It suspects the boy might be hiding something truly special. With a wide grin, it says, it can't wait to see more. Announcing the first test is over, it prepares for the next one. With its pages turning, the Necronomicon prepares for the next instruction. In the book, the first instruction was to take a life. He then closes the book, ready to follow the next step of the test. The second instruction was for him to raise those who had fallen in battle. He holds the open book, processing the words he has just read. Reading the words, he understands he needs to raise the undead. Looking at the bodies of his enemies, he prepares for the second part of the test. With a faint smile on his face, he seems to understand what needs to be done. Then, with a sinister look, he prepares to use necromancy for the first time. Flipping through the book, he reads the instructions to reanimate the undead. Nodding, Marbus instructs him to look at the goblins he defeated. He then looks away, preparing to follow the book's next instruction. According to the demon, he needs to channel his mana into his eyes and maximize his vision. By doing so, he will see a thread on each body connected to an unknown place. Looking at the bodies, he can see the threads of energy coming out of them. Marbus explains that, in the language of necromancers, this is called the death line. He understands that this line crosses the boundaries of death and connects souls. Confirming his deduction, the creature instructs him to reach out and touch the line. Marbus then explains that a necromancer separates souls from bodies to revive them. By combining the souls with his mana, he can command the reanimation of the dead. The goblins' bodies then begin to rise slowly from the ground. One of the goblins raises its head, revealing a new, more demonic form. Annoyed, Marbus decides he will demonstrate how the process should be done. The creature then moves toward Leon to begin the spell. With the goblin sword, Leon prepares for the next step. According to Marbus, this marking process is essential for necromancy. He explains that this is the only method that works against monsters. Understanding the process, Leon stands up, still recovering from his injuries. Dropping a small ball, Marbus instructs him to try it on his own. Before starting, Leon asks a question about something that's bothering him. He recalls his father saying it's more complex to turn a human into an undead. He then asks if he has reached the level to perform such a feat. Marbus comments that he speaks like someone who needs this ability. With a smile, Marbus asks who the unfortunate target of his spell would be. Without hesitation, he reveals that his target is Kirchel von Marbus. With a smirk, he adds that it's his only uncle. Meanwhile, laughter echoes through the hall where Kirchel and his allies are celebrating. Everyone continues to drink and laugh, celebrating a victory they believe is assured. In the midst of the party, his allies continue to celebrate together. Holding a glass, he says his life has been peaceful since his brother's death. Laughing, he boasts that this is the life of a man of opportunity. One of his allies agrees, saying all that's left is to take care of the sole heir. The man continues, saying he must feel a weight off his shoulders. Kirchel then replies that getting rid of the boy poses no problem. Celebrating, he tells everyone to raise their glasses and drink their fill. Suddenly, a tremor shakes the hall where they were celebrating. The ceiling structure begins to give way and collapse on them. The ceiling collapses, throwing everyone to the ground and causing great confusion. Surprised, Kirchel wonders what happened, recalling the place's magical protection. Looking to the side, he tries to understand the source of the unexpected attack. Asking a woman for silence, he concentrates, trying to hear a sound. Shouting, he asks who is there, doubting anyone would dare attack him. A voice then questions what made him so sure. With a flash of light, Leon suddenly appears in the hall, ready for a confrontation. With a smile, Kirchel faces him and who is there. Making a signal, he calls his guards, mocking the young patriarch. Up close, Leon stares at his uncle, showing no emotion on his face. He then ironically thanks him for being recognized by his own traitorous uncle. Kirchel asks what he wants, seeing no reason for a visit. Questioning the question, Leon says a lord doesn't need a reason to visit. With a look of contempt, Kirchel says a worthy lord wouldn't. Shouting, he says they both know Leon is far from worthy. He then asks if the boy is afraid of losing his seat. Laughing, he warns that it's too late as his father is no longer there. Looking at his uncle, Leon remains silent, processing his words. Raising his hand, he prepares to respond to his uncle's provocation. He then says that he now has the means to keep himself safe alone. Mocking his confidence, Kirchel calls the boy bold for coming there. Leon then replies that the boldness is his uncle's for assuming he came alone. Annoyed, Kirchel begins to question what the young lord is saying. Suddenly, a magical tremor unbalances him, coming from a shadow on the floor. He realizes this is not common magic, but the magic of the abyss. Recognizing the sensation, he feels a darkness far deeper than he had imagined. With wide eyes, he doubts what is about to happen. From the shadows, the reanimated goblins emerge, ready for the coming battle. Taking a step forward, Leon positions himself to lead his new army. Surrounded by the creatures, Kirchel confirms that they are indeed undead. Shocked, he shouts that not even his late brother could wield such power. Leon then says that House Marbus is once again a clan of necromancers. Gritting his teeth, Kirchel can't believe what he's seeing. He then orders his guards to take down the abominations immediately. Obeying the order, the guards advance to attack the undead. With a fixed gaze, Leon prepares to command his army of creatures. With a quick step, the goblins advance to combat the guards. Blocking the guards' attack, the undead goblin counterattacks with its weapon. Surprised, the guard yells that the creature managed to parry the blow. Then, the creature shoves the guard's arm, breaking free from his grip. With a swift cut, the goblin strikes the guard squarely in the chest. Amid screams of pain, blood splatters on the guard's face. After that, the guard's body falls to the ground right in front of Kirchel. Shocked by the scene, Kirchel stares at the surprising strength of the undead. Advancing relentlessly, the undead face several guards at once. Surrounded by the guards, the undead goblin shows no hesitation in fighting. Terrified, Kirchel calls Leon a monster, unable to believe what is happening. Watching the battle, Kirchel realizes something is terribly wrong. As blood splatters on his face, he finds the scene deeply unsettling. Analyzing the power, he notices the boy is commanding necromancy. Trying to use his own magic, he's enveloped by a dark energy. In shock, he wonders how any of this can be happening here. A sphere of dark energy forms in his hand, but to no effect. He tries to manipulate the energy, but fails to control the boy's power. Screaming, he accuses him of mocking the power of the house's founding patriarch. Leon then asks if it's strange that the patriarch can command the dead. Kirchel shouts that necromancy is a long-lost art. He continues, saying that not even Leon's father could use this power. Refusing to believe it, he says he won't tolerate his nephew's nonsense. Leon then replies that if he doesn't believe it, he'll be shown the truth. With a serious look, he warns that this would not be a wise choice. Behind him, the army of undead goblins prepares to attack. Growling, the goblins prepare for the imminent attack on the guards. Advancing with speed, the creatures charge at Kerchel and his men. Surrounded, Kerchel tries to defend himself as the goblins attack him in unison. Trying to use his magic, he launches a sphere of dark energy. Screaming, he commands the undead to return to the abyss where they came from. The energy hits one of the creatures, but causes no significant damage. The goblin's body disintegrates, but it quickly regenerates. With a disbelieving smile, Kerchel realizes the creature wasn't destroyed by the blow. Part of the goblin's face reconstructs itself, showing its regenerative ability. Its face renewed, the goblin prepares to attack Kerchel again. In the energy orb, the creature's soul stirs with intensity. With a cry, the goblin lunges at Kerchel with its claws. As he's hit, Kerchel screams in pain, wounded by the monster's attack. Desperate, he yells for someone to defeat the monster attacking him. With clenched teeth, he glares at the creature with hatred and determination. On the ground, one of the guards' heads rolls near Kirchhoff's feet. Angered, he conjures a sphere of dark energy to defend himself from the creatures. Charging at the goblins, he attacks with his magic, but with little success. He admits that his prowess with magic is only slightly better than a novice's. Threatening his nephew, he screams that there will be consequences for his betrayal. One of the creatures rushes forward to attack him with its sharp weapon. The goblin delivers a swift and precise blow towards his body. With a cry of pain, he is struck squarely in the chest by the blade. Looking at the wound, he can't believe he's been hit. Blood begins to drip from his body, forming a puddle on the ground. Clutching the sphere of magic, he tries to stay on his feet despite his injury. The sphere in his hand begins to crack, losing its stability and power. Questioning how he dares to turn against his own blood, he curses him. Leon then remembers reading a treatise on the continent's history. He says there are victors and the vanquished separated by time. Wounded, Kerchel asks if the boy intends to give him a lesson now. Leon replies that despite being devoid of emotions, he still seeks meaning. Breathing with difficulty, Kerchel listens intently to his nephew's words. Leon then reveals that forgiveness is the privilege of the victor in battle. He approaches and says that his uncle was once a victor too. He says it happened when Kerchel betrayed Leon's father to survive. Angrily, Kerchel tells him to shut up and stop talking. Raising his hand, Leon says he won't say goodbye, but he hopes he suffers. Holding the book, he declares that Kerchel will always remember this day as his defeat. As punishment, he warns that he will strip him of the ambition to see another day. With a gesture, he orders the undead goblins to attack his uncle. Commanding the attack in the patriarch's name, he watches the scene unfold. Lifeless, Kerchel's hand falls to the ground, marking his end. Observing the body, Marbus comments that he's as unhinged as he suspected. Marbus wonders how a novice can use the art with such skill. Thoughtfully, Leon remains silent, staring at the floor in his uncle's body. Suddenly, he seems to get an idea, a look of surprise on his face. With a sinister smile, he reveals he's had a rather amusing idea. Marbus wonders if the idea is amusing or in fact terrifying. Elsewhere, the counselors gather again in the grand meeting hall. One of them asks why another council meeting was called so soon. He asks if anyone has any idea why Churchill summoned them. Another noble replies that he's as clueless as he is about the situation. Worried, one of the men says that an urgent meeting is no joke. He speculates that House Sylvester might break the treaty. Trying to calm things down, the other counselor tells him not to be paranoid. He explains that resuming the war would require the king's official approval. Agreeing, they decide they should stay put and await orders. The door to the meeting room opens, interrupting the counselor's conversation. Entering the room, he approaches the table where the counselors await him. Walking slowly, he passes one of the nobles who watches him with suspicion. Whispering, one of the counselors questions Leon's presence at the meeting. Another man wonders if he's there to challenge his uncle. In silence, he listens to the conversations, not revealing his true intentions. Looking ahead, he prepares to confront the counselors. In a firm voice, he asks if they were expecting to see his uncle. Pulling out a chair, he says his uncle won't be joining the meeting. He then corrects himself, saying it would be more accurate to say he cannot attend. Confused, one of the counselors asks him to clarify what he means. Sitting down, Leon coldly reveals that his uncle is now dead. Shocked, the counselors can't believe the news they've just heard. He then confirms that his uncle died by his own hands. With his hands folded, he asks if any member of the council has anything to say. Speechless, the counselors stare at the young lord, still processing the news. The other council members also fall silent, shocked by the revelation. Slamming his hand on the table, one man stands, outraged. He demands an explanation from Leon, not just vague words. He asks how Leon can possibly explain the death of their most important elder. Another counselor agrees, saying that Leon owes them an explanation at the very least. With a steady gaze, Leon prepares to reveal the truth about his uncle. He then reveals that Kirchel von Marba was a traitor to the family name. Not only did he turn against his father, but he also leaked vital information to their enemies. Shocked, the counselor can't believe the charge of treason. Leon continues, saying what he finds curious is their loyalty. He questions why, even with grounds for execution, they still defend him. One of the counselors reflects that the meeting was called in Churchill's name. Another man thinks about how foolish the old man was to be defeated. Sensing the danger, one of the counselors says this is no time to let their guard down. He wonders how Leon managed to defeat Churchill without any outside help. Suddenly, another man stands up claiming he never suspected a thing. Outraged, he curses Churchill's name for committing such a grave offense. Frightened, another noble swallows hard, processing the new turn of events. Panicking, he stands and protests his innocence, denying any involvement. Tapping his fingers on the table, Leon silently observes their reactions. In a firm voice, he commands them all to be silent at once. He accuses them of negligence for not discovering the traitor in their house. One of the counselors realizes the boy has tricked them, setting a trap. Another man questions if there is any proof that Kirchhoff was a traitor. Remaining silent, Leon doesn't answer the question about proof. He then says their reaction was predicted by someone more perceptive. Looking to the side, the small Marbus creature appears on his shoulder. With a smile, Marbus watches the scene unfold with great interest. His eyes gleaming, he prepares for the next phase of his plan. Agreeing to provide proof, Leon prepares to demonstrate Kershaw's betrayal. With a spell, he envelopes the room in a dark, mysterious energy. Extending his hand, he introduces himself as the true son of House Marba. He then invokes the name of the cursed soul that plagues the realm. From the shadows, undead goblins emerge, ready to obey his commands. Using the Necronomicon, he begins to recite the incantation for the spell. One of the counselors recognizes the spell to summon the undead and is terrified. Suddenly, Churchill's body begins to contort and rise again. One of the men wonders if he has discovered the forgotten magic of the house. Wide-eyed, the counselor can't believe the scene before him. Calling his uncle's name, Leon prepares for the next step. Rising as an undead, Kirchill prepares to confess his crimes. Shocked, the counselor questions how any of this is possible. With a weary look, Leon says he's getting tired of the same question. With a shriek, the undead goblins advance, showcasing the power of necromancy. Terrified, one of the counselors screams for everyone to run for their lives. Frantic, another man runs to escape the meeting room. As he tries to flee, he is grabbed by another counselor who stops him. The body of the man holding him falls lifeless to the floor. In shock, the counselor watches his colleague's body on the floor. Frightened, he turns and begs for help. Desperate, crawling on the floor, another man begs the young lord for mercy. Dragged backward, he screams in terror as he's caught by the undead. Standing before him, Leon stares with a cold, distant gaze. With a warning, he says the meeting isn't over for them yet. Holding the book, he warns that it's best to obey the patriarch. With a spell, the undead Churchill rises, ready to attack. His uncle's body contorts, taking on a more monstrous and terrifying form. With his mouth agape, Churchill prepares to attack the counselors. Leon then prepares to ask again about Churchill's betrayal. Using necromancy, Leon forces his uncle to answer his question. The undead uncle reveals that everyone who served the last patriarch, he confesses that they all turned against him with no exceptions. With the confession, Leon faces the counselors, confirming everyone's betrayal. In a panic, one of the counselors begs the young lord for forgiveness. Another man offers to confess all his crimes in exchange for a pardon. A third counselor asks for a chance to prove his loyalty. Suddenly, the undead Kirchill's eyes widen in a final moment. In the background, the screams of the counselors echo through the meeting room. With a neutral expression, he watches the scene, showing no emotion. Raising his hand, he prepares to make an official announcement to the council. With the power vested in him, he proclaims himself the new patriarch. Holding the Necronomicon, he prepares to finish his declaration. He then announces that the dark art of necromancy has been restored. Amidst the fallen bodies, he surveys the room, the Necronomicon floating beside him. With a thoughtful expression, he seems to be searching for someone in the room. Behind a door, a servant flinches upon hearing the Lord's voice. Peeking through a crack, the servant watches the young lord in great fear. Stammering, he reveals that the man being sought is in the dungeons for sedition. Ordering the man to guide him, Leon turns to follow the servant. With firm steps, he walks down the hall following the servant to the dungeons. Stopping before a door, he prepares for another confrontation. With a smile, he says the others can flee if they wish. He then warns that he cannot be held responsible for what happens next. Worried, the servants stare at the young lord, unsure of what to do. The door closes, leaving the kneeling and frightened servants behind. In another room, a man approaches a table with confident strides. Calling for the Lord Patriarch, he prepares to deliver a message. He then hands over a sealed letter saying it has just arrived for him. Receiving the letter, he stares at it with a serious, thoughtful gaze. Carefully, he opens the envelope to read its contents. Holding the letter, he carefully reads the information he has just received. With a satisfied smirk, he seems pleased with what he has read. He comments that the Imperial House has also turned its back on House Marbus. His advisor agrees, saying they never had much to show for themselves. He continues, saying their capital and manpower are laughable. Reading the letter, the Lord agrees they have even less than that. Slamming his hand on the table, he says they will proceed as planned for now. He then reveals that House Marbus will be destroyed in next month's war. Asking if he is up to the task, he receives an affirmative answer. With a smirk, he questions if there is any chance of defeat in their plan. The advisor says they would only lose if a full-fledged necromancer suddenly appeared. He adds that the chances of losing are insignificant at best. With a sideways glance and a smile, the Lord seems confident in his impending victory. With a confident smile, he says the war is entirely theirs to win. In the dungeons, a man shouts for the young master, calling for his attention. Kneeling, he begs for forgiveness for allowing Kirchhoff's ambitions to grow. He then says he deserves nothing less than death for his failure. Looking at the man, Leon calls him by his name, Sir Pullen. He recognizes Pullen as one of the few loyal vassals left in the house. Placing a hand on his arm, he asks the vassal to rise. He says there is still much work to be done and that he requires his services. Surprised, Pullen questions what use he could possibly be to the young master. Looking slightly disheveled, he listens to the young lord's words. Wiping his face, he hears Leon instruct him to take a bath. Turning away, Leon says they will discuss the details in the Patriarch's office. With a grateful smile, Pullen thanks his new lord immensely. He then solemnly swears to serve the young lord with eternal loyalty. Back in the office, Leon and Marbus watch the scenery through the window. Leaping onto his shoulder, the small creature settles in for the conversation. With a paw on its cheek, Marbus watches him with a curious look. The creature then asks what he intends to do next. Leaving the choice in his hands, Marbus awaits his contractor's decision. In shock, Pullen begs for forgiveness, not understanding the young lord's proposal. He says that contacting the Sylvesters would be a dangerous mission. With his arms crossed, he reflects that it would require an extraordinary performance. Extending a hand, Leon asks if what he has isn't enough. Using his magic, he summons a shadow that emerges from the floor. The shadow molds and transforms, taking on a new humanoid form. The creature then takes on the exact appearance of his undead uncle, Kirchhoff. Staring at Pullen, the new servant readies itself for the upcoming mission. Pullen wonders how the Lord can be so calm about all of this. He reflects that Leon is truly unparalleled, surpassing all expectations. With a smile, he realizes the rumors about necromancy are true. With a calm gaze, Leon confirms that the rumors about him are true. Pullen reflects that at its peak, House Marba could have conquered everything. Clearing his throat, he composes himself. Still surprised by the young lord's abilities, he warns that commanding the undead might fool their enemies for a while. The undead servant cannot recreate details like handwriting or behavior. Leon then reveals that this isn't an undead created from Kirchhoff's body. He explains that this is merely the form of a doppelganger he found. According to him, the monster can replicate a person's appearance and memories. Suddenly, the creature shows pull in a small sphere of dark energy. With a sidelong glance, Leon observes the scene without saying a word. In a quick flashback, a bloody dagger is shown in the dark. The hallway torch goes out, plunging the area into total darkness. Panting, he leans against the wall, recovering from the battle against the monsters. After a sigh, he asks if that monster had a name. The creature then reveals that its name was, in fact, Doppelganger. Marbus explains that the monster can partially copy appearances and memories. According to him, it's a creature that likes to imitate lost or late travelers. In the end, it kills the original and devours even their traveling companions. With his arms crossed, Leon reflects on the nature of the monster he faced. With a smile, Marbus comments that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Suddenly, the undead woman rises, filled with a new dark energy. The creature's body begins to transform, taking on a more powerful form. With a sinister smile, the creature addresses him, commenting on his lineage. Shrouded in dark energy, the creature prepares for battle. The new undead servant takes its position, awaiting its master's orders. Turning to the side, Leon asks if he should be satisfied with this. With a smile, Marbus replies that he should definitely satisfied. He explains that the creature can only transform into targets it has already encountered. He then asks if the contractor accepts the terms of the new power. Turning away, Leon is reminded that despite being talented, he is still a beginner. Marbus warns him that his uncle's soul will eventually return to nothingness. Suggesting he should leave, Marbus is cut off by an immediate refusal. With a hand on his chest, he states that he will not turn his back on his lineage. He says the innocent people will be slaughtered or subjugated by their enemies. Asked if he would risk his life, he says he would die for them. Marbus then questions the reason for his loyalty, wondering about its purpose. He decides there are more urgent matters to attend to at the moment. From the ground, a new shadow creature emerges, ready for combat. He then instructs him to turn the shadow creature into his undead. Asked about the creature, Marbus reveals it was one of Welland's servants. He warns him that the creature might be difficult to handle in its current state. With an intense glow, the magic symbol on the book shines brightly. Using the book, Leon summons the soul of the dead back to the realm of the living. The energy condenses, forming the shadow creature's body before him. With its body fully formed, the creature rises ready for combat. Its eyes glow intensely, staring at the young lord with a defiant gaze. Hitting the creature, Marbus wakes it up, announcing the house's new contractor. Annoyed, Marbus orders the creature to take a different form so they can talk. After a moment's thought, the creature seems to have an idea for a transformation. Clasping its hands, it prepares to change form and take on a new appearance. Engulfed in shadows, the creature begins to transform rapidly, taking the form of the young lord, Disdain. Furious, Marbus yells at the creature, saying it must have a death wish. Responding to Marbus's taunt, the creature says it's already dead. With the same appearance, the creature faces the young lord side by side. Poland suggests that with Curdle's memories, they can deceive the Sylvesters. He then assures them the ruse will work and that he will handle everything himself. With a smile, Leon says that was the answer he wanted to hear. Poland then asks to pose one last question to his new lord. He questions why Leon is determined to stay despite the dangers. With his back turned, Leon recalls Marbus' suggestion to leave the house. He then replies that it's his duty to protect the house, and that's all. With a look of surprise, Poland swears to serve his will to the best of his ability. Asked about his determination, Leon admits he pondered it for a while. He says he doesn't have a noble purpose, but rather a personal doubt. According to him, the answer isn't clear yet, but he needs time. With a slight smile, he sits down, ready to continue the conversation. He concludes by saying he needs to stop everyone who wants to take something from them. He concludes that by avoiding his father's mistake, he might find the answer. With a slight smile, he seems pleased with his own reflection. The creature then remarks that the house seems to have fallen quite low. Annoyed, Marbus scolds the creature for addressing the contractor so casually. Confused, it points out that Lord Marbus himself doesn't seem to care for formalities. Clearing his throat, Marbus asks if it's usually this dense about social cues. Confirming, it wonders how Marbus knew about that trait of its. The creature reveals it was once the familiar of Welland, the house's founder. In other words, it was left as part of his inheritance for him. Marbus explains that Crow was a loyal servant and assassin in his ancestors' service. Reflecting, he figures the ability to transform must have been useful for an assassin. The creature then praises Crow, saying he's very useful unlike Marbus. Seriously, Leon says he needs the creature's abilities for his plan. He then asks if Crow can take on the appearance of his late uncle. Correcting the saying, Marbus calls him an ignoramus, annoyed by the mistake. The creature asks why waste one's palate on human sweets. With a smile, Leon says to each their own. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door, interrupting their conversation. Surprised, he turns and asks who is knocking. From the other side, Pullen announces himself, calling for the Lord Patriarch. Handing over the letter, he says he received it from the Sylvesters and came in person. In the letter, House Marbus is accused of abandoning its ducal duties. The message continues, criticizing the house for feasting on the people. House Sylvester then challenges House Marbus to a war of nobles. If the house surrenders, there will be no war and the people will be accepted. Otherwise, the army will march and destroy everything in its path. Reading the letter, Leon and Marbus analyze the declaration of war. With a serious look, Marbus comments that the storm is approaching quickly. He then asks if Leon is scared since they only have a month. Leon interrupts, saying he misunderstood what he meant. Manifesting his powers, he prepares to answer the declaration of war. Burning the letter, he warns that he doesn't have the patience to wait that long. Marba then calls him unhinged, warning him about the strength of the enemy army. Still, the creature asks if he intends to stay and fight everyone. With a confident smile, he replies that he thinks they'll do just fine. He then declares that this time he will have no mercy and will finish them all. On the streets, people are talking about Sir Churchill's sudden disappearance. One man hopes the young lord is all right. Another worries if the boy can handle the coming storm. A confident young man says that as Rune's son, he'll be fine. One of the men reflects that the Sylvesters won't be attacking the gates anytime soon. Clearing his throat, Pullen interrupts the men's conversation, getting their attention. He reminds them that loose lips sink ships, a warning against gossip. Walking down the street, Leon and Pullen watch the townspeople. Startled, the men bow, saying they were just talking. One of them offers condolences for the loss, calling it a terrible situation. Leon then replies that, on the contrary, his uncle is still alive. He explains that his uncle is just bedridden with a sudden illness. With a smile, he tells them not to worry too much. He reflects that to deceive the enemy, you must first deceive your allies. He then orders Pullen to ensure the silence of all witnesses. Pullen asks the purpose of their visit to the city center. Leon answers that there was something he needed to see for himself. Marbus then says he's found what they were looking for. He reveals that he senses a potent magical force coming from inside the building. From a distance, they observe the facade of the large imposing building. He then asks Pullen to wait there for him until he returns. Ordering the door to be sealed, he says he wants to go alone. With a serious look, he warns Pullen not to let anyone in or out. Opening the door, he prepares to enter the mysterious building. The place is a mess with broken furniture and bloodstains. Entering, he sees several men cleaning up the mess in the main hall. Suddenly, one of the men's ears twitches, noticing his presence. Asking if that's him, Leon gets confirmation from Marba. With visible scars, the man appears to be an experienced warrior. Kneeling on the floor, the man reveals a strong, scarred body. Marba laments that such immense talent is being wasted like this. Asking for a moment, Leon approaches the man to speak with him. Bowing, the man apologizes for the commotion caused by other guests. In the background, the establishment's owners watch the interaction with suspicion. Suddenly, the woman kicks him, scolding him for speaking to the Lord. Apologizing, she says she didn't mean for him to be received like this. With a look of contempt, she prepares to continue her scolding. She then slaps him across the face, calling him a mongrel. Turning, she warns him that he is speaking to Lord Marbus. With his head down, he apologizes, saying he didn't know. Leon then repeats, "As I said, I'd like a moment of your time." The woman replies that she would be delighted, as she has all the time in the world. Cutting her off, he says he has nothing to say to her. He then reveals his business is with the Beastman, not her. According to Marba, that Beastman has immense potential for growth. Kneeling on the floor, the Beastman stares at the ground, still recovering from his injuries. With a surprised look, he wonders about what the woman said. He questions if that young boy is really the head of House Marbus. Leon then extends his hand and conjures a sphere of healing energy. Surprised, the Beastman watches him, not understanding what is happening. The energy envelopes his body, slowly healing his most severe wounds. The wounds on his chest begin to close with the power of the magic. Healed, he wonders if the young lord truly healed his wounds. Leon then asks one last time if he can have a moment of his time. In the background, the woman watches them with a look of suspicion and surprise. Interrupting the conversation, she says the beast man is her personal slave. She continues, saying he should be asking her permission, not his. He then reflects that the owner wasn't present when he faced his uncle. With a smile, he says he has a few questions for her. He begins by asking since when the Duchy of Marbus has permitted the ownership of slaves. Questioning the woman, he asks why she insists on his childhood title. With his eyes closed, he begins to understand what might be happening. With a furious expression, the woman reveals her true nature to him. In a quick memory, two men are seen working over a cauldron. Then he asks if she doesn't recognize him as the rightful patriarch. With a wide grin, Marba praises the audacity of his new contractor. He warns that he will not tolerate any disrespect towards the bearer of his pact. Turning to the woman, Marbus warns that there will be no mercy for her. With an irritated look, he orders her to free all her slaves. He then gives her 10 minutes to comply with his order with no second chances. With a smirk, the woman faces him, unintimidated. She then asks if he is prepared for what will happen next. With a mocking smile, she asks if she neglected his title again. Leaning on the beastman, he says he's used to hearing worse. Surprised, the beastman can't believe the young lord's kindness. He says he doesn't understand what he did to deserve his kindness. With a snap of his fingers, Leon prepares for the next step. Suddenly, a group of armed men surrounds the two in the hall. With war cries, the men charge forward, ready to attack the young lord. With his arms crossed, he watches the men showing no concern. With his hand outstretched, he prepares to summon his undead servants. Dark energy splashes onto the floor, beginning the summoning spell. From the pools of energy, undead goblins emerge ready for battle. Charging forward, the creatures attack the men who scream in terror and pain. In shock, the woman watches the scene, not understanding what is happening. Sheathing his dagger, he approaches one of his undead servants. He asks the goblin for one of its blades, showing that his is damaged. Taking the new weapon, he says he will return it when he's done with it. With the new blade in hand, he charges into the middle of the battle. With a swift and precise cut, he strikes one of the men down. Startled, the woman questions what is happening to the young lord. She wonders how the useless boy suddenly gained so much power. From a distance, the beastman watches the battle with a look of surprise. Leon then turns to him and asks what he did to deserve his kindness. He says that although he sees himself as a slave, he is essential to his cause. He wonders what use he could be to the head of a noble house. According to him, he is just a wanderer, shunned by the entire continent. In a memory, he falls face first into a muddy puddle. Begging for them to stop, he cries for help. Lying on the ground, a group of men surrounds him, blaming his kind for the ruined harvest. He recalls that, in his childhood, he couldn't understand the cruelty. He didn't understand why the human children bullied him so much. Being just an innocent child, none of it made sense to him. His eyes transform, reflecting the trauma and pain of the past. Now he says he understands the reason for all that suffering better. He remembers screaming, asking why they wouldn't just leave him alone. The only reason for their hatred was that he was different from them. With a cry of rage, he unleashes his energy, questioning the cruelty. With tears in his eyes, he stares into the void, remembering his past. One day, he realized he was too naive to understand the truth. Frightened, he wonders if all of that was his doing in disbelief. He remembers that at first, he couldn't accept the truth about himself. Back in the present, the woman observes the goblin standing beside him. She screams, asking what he has done and if he thinks he can stop them. With a fixed gaze, Leon listens to the accusations, showing no reaction. He then replies that, for now, she might be right about him. Extending his hand, he says he doesn't intend to remain a useless lord. With a spell, he declares that he will become a patriarch worthy of House Marba. Pointing at the woman, he prepares to give the order to his servants. With a smile, he warns her that she has no place in his vision for the future. Furious, the woman curses him, unable to believe his audacity. With the floor stained with blood, he turns to the beast man. Looking at the young lord, the beast man observes him with newfound respect. He reflects that although Leon is a killer, he doesn't feel afraid. Kneeling on the floor, he wonders why he feels no fear in his presence. With a smile, he calls the beast man by his name, Walter, and asks for his help. He then says he requires the Beastman services for his plans. Before offering his loyalty, Walter asks to pose a question to the Lord. Enveloped in his aura, he stands up, ready to explain his situation. With marks on his face, he looks at the young lord with seriousness. He introduces himself as a cub of the demon wolf tribe, hated by all. With a sad look, he questions how long he must live in shame. Leon then assures him that this will no longer happen, promising a change. Looking at the young lord, Walter listens intently to his words. Leon admits he knows little about his situation, but he understands his pain. He declares that from this moment on, prejudice will no longer be tolerated. He then invites him to become a trusted vassal of House Marbas. Facing the young lord, Walter processes the offer he has just received. With his hand outstretched, Leon gives him his word, sealing the promise. With tears in his eyes, Walter listens to the young lord's promise. With a smile, Leon reaffirms his promise to make him a vassal. Standing before him, he gives his word, sealing the deal between them. Crying, Walter is moved by the chance for a new life. Accepting the offer, he gratefully takes the young lord's hand. Leon then asks if he can take his silence as a yes. With tears in his eyes, Walter says he would be overjoyed to serve him. The scene changes, showing a grand castle under a sunny sky. In a great hall, a man walks toward the emperor's throne. Seated on the throne is Esteban, emperor of the Archime Empire. At his side is Louis, the crown prince of the vast empire. The prince then asks the vassal the purpose of his royal audience. Bowing, the man reveals that a letter has arrived from House Sylvester. Annoyed, the prince complains about having to worry about a mere count. With a serious expression, the emperor watches the scene in silence. Kneeling, the man says his only purpose is to deliver good news. Begging for forgiveness, he awaits the crown prince's response. He reflects that he cannot incur the wrath of the most powerful man in the empire. With a smile, the prince asks if he is referring to House Marbas. The man confirms, saying they have been the object of his hatred for years. He then suggests that the prince support House Sylvester against their common enemy. With a smile, the prince finds the notion interesting and ponders it. He recalls that House Marbas possesses the power of necromancy, making war difficult. The man explains that they have no heir to wield that power. The prince then allows him to proceed with his move to get rid of them. Rushing through the hall, the vassal withdraws to carry out the order. With a smile, the prince says he will finally remove that thorn in his side. The emperor watches him with a look of concern and mistrust. Raising his hand, the prince prepares to take power for himself. Placing his hands on his father's shoulders, he says that soon, everything will be his. Seated at his desk, Leon gathers his new vassals for a talk. Pullen suggests that Walter use an artifact to hide his identity. With the artifact around his neck, he listens to his new master's instructions. The artifact then takes the form of a collar, completing his disguise. Pullen instructs him not to hinder the Lord's cause in any way. With a nod, he praises the young man's cunning and obedience. He then says he needs to discuss some important matters with everyone. First, he insists they take their oaths of fealty. He asks if they are prepared to pledge their loyalty to him. Surprised, Pullen agrees immediately without a moment's hesitation. Grabbing the Lord's hands, he swears to dedicate his life to House Marbas. Crying, he begs for a chance to fulfill his oath to the Lord. The dark creature is impressed by Leon's ability to bend the old man to his will. Marbas agrees, saying that domination is a core principle of the house. Walter then says he feels the same, expressing his loyalty to the Lord. Facing his new vassals, Leon prepares for the next step. Shrugging, the creature says those are their principles, not his. Before they begin, he proposes they all make a mana pact. He then warns that refusal will mean they have no intention of joining him. Surprised, Walter asks what a mana pact with the Lord is. A mana pact converts magical force into a pattern, creating a bond. This allows the two to share all secrets kept in the darkness. Standing up, he gets into position to begin the mana pact ritual. Before his servants, he prepares to seal the deal between them. With no objections, he announces they can begin the mana pact. With a gesture, he conjures a dark energy, initiating the pact's spell. The energy transforms into a scroll ready to be signed by all. The scroll opens before Pullen and Walter, awaiting their signatures. Muttering, Walter stares at the scroll, still processing the situation. Suddenly, Marbas assumes his original form, revealing his immense power. As the house's deity, he announces he will serve as a witness to the pact. Declaring the pact, he warns that their souls will be bound to Marbas' domain. Marbas then declares for all to praise their new and sovereign lord. Engulfed in a great energy, he announces the rise of the sovereign of the undead. Before his vassals, Marbas's imposing figure dominates the hall. Stunned, Pullen and Walter stare at the house's deity in amazement. In a calm voice, Leon says that's enough of this charade. He then approaches, saying they are his trusted vassals. With his eyes closed, Marbas assumes they all accept the pact. He warns them that the price of the pact will be their very souls. With his head bowed, Pollen swears he would never commit such a betrayal. He wonders if that is the demon the First Lord made a contract with. Reflecting, he concludes that this is the only explanation for Leon's power. Walter is surprised by the overwhelming density of the young lord's mana. Trembling, he notes that despite his attunement to mana, he was frozen in place. He then wonders about the true nature of young Master Leon. Marbas's dark energy begins to slowly dissipate into the air. Returning to its small form, the creature sits on the hall floor. Surprised, Walter wonders what that cute little kitten is. Placing a hand over his mouth, Pullen stops him from speaking about the creature. Annoyed, Marbas asks what he just said about his form. Trying to de-escalate, Pullen says he was just marveling at his presence. With a smile, Marbas asks if that's true, accepting the excuse. He then warns them not to reveal his existence as knowledge is power in war. According to him, the nobles had little interest in the uncle to begin with. Walter then asks about Sir Kirchel, looking a bit confused. He remembers the landlady receiving a letter to be delivered to Kirchel. Asking where to find the letter, he learns that Walter doesn't know. Suddenly, Crow appears and reveals he knows where the letter is. Bringing a chest, he calls the others fools for forgetting the spoils. Inside the chest, a large amount of jewels and treasures is revealed. Slapping Crow, Marbas calls him a greedy self-serving servant. He explains that Crow believes everything in the tavern now belongs to the victor. Rummaging through the chest, they start looking for the mysterious letter. With a keen eye, he prepares to inspect the treasure chest. Amidst the jewels, he finds the sealed letter they were looking for. Holding the letter, he announces they finally found it in the chest. With a sarcastic compliment, Crow says Marbas can be useful from time to time. He then stands up and announces he will read the letter aloud. The letter is addressed to the adversaries of House Marba with a threatening tone. The author declares himself to be in the Emperor's service, justifying his future actions. With a 1-month deadline, the letter demands the house's total surrender. Should they refuse, they must prove their innocence on the battlefield. His vassals watch him, awaiting his response to the declaration of war. Pondering the deadline, he asks Marba if a month isn't enough time. Glancing sideways, he says he has no problem with the timing. He reveals that with his new power, he can have a little fun. Looking at the creature, he prepares to give a new order. Calling for Ser Crow, he prepares to reveal his amusing plan. With a smile, Leon says he believes he has a mission for him. In a room, a man informs the Lord that the declaration of war has been issued. Laughing, he comments on the pathetic expression on Churchill's face. Laughing as well, the Lord imagines Churchill now regrets his betrayal. With a serious look, he says that they must keep him alive nonetheless. He explains that Churchill is a useful idiot for his plans. He then asks what happened to the boy, the rightful heir. The man replies there's no news, but he imagines Churchill killed him. Please, the Lord says the news is excellent for his plans. The man then asks why he was so concerned about the boy. Before he can finish, the Lord cuts him off with a question. He asks what the greatest injustice a human can experience is. Not knowing the answer, the man admits he's no scholar. With a fixed gaze, the Lord prepares to reveal his answer. He says it is being confronted by an overwhelming enemy without hope. He concludes there can be no greater suffering than that. His servant then asks what he supposes is the cause of such injustice. The answer, he says, is innate talent and nothing more. Confused, the servant asks what talent the boy could possibly have for that. He scolds him, reminding him that this is about the bloodline of Wellen von Marbas. Bowing, the servant agrees, saying they will be ready for all possibilities. Observing the scene, the doppelganger remarks that it's quite a spectacle. With a smile, he watches the creature mimicking his speech with precision. The creature boasts, saying it has more to offer than simple magical force. Enraged, Marbas attacks the doppelganger with a flurry of quick strikes. With a smile, Leon just wipes his face, unbothered by the fight. Roaring with rage, Marbus curses the creature, calling it an insolent worm. Startled, Walter watches the fight between the two creatures in amazement. With a peaceful gesture, Leon asks if it's always this noisy around here. Holding a sword, he says they have only 1 month left. He hands the weapon to Walter, ready to begin the training. Sword in hand, he asks Walter to demonstrate his skills. Walter understands that if he fails, he won't be part of his cause. With his eyes closed, Leon says he has no interest in a vassal who will perish. Clenching his fist, Walter prepares to accept the Lord's challenge. He vows to overcome any obstacle to earn a place by his side. He then asks if the Lord will grant him a wish once he succeeds. With a smile, Leon agrees, giving his word to seal the deal. Clearing his throat, Pullen offers to oversee Walter's martial training. He suggests that his aptitude will become clear by training with the knights. With Marbus on his shoulder, Leon prepares to leave for training. The creature then reminds him that he also needs training for his own potential. With everyone gathered, they walk together to the training grounds. From a distance, the castle's architecture stands out under the sunlight. In the courtyard, two swords clash in intense combat training. Training together, the two warriors exchange blows with their sharp swords. With a determined look, Walter powerfully shoves the knight's sword away. Nearby, Leon casts a spell, preparing for his own training. An undead skeleton rises, ready to face the knights in combat. Walter charges at the skeletons, attacking with his sword in hand. With a glow surrounding his body, he prepares for a powerful attack. With a swift cut, he destroys two skeletons in a single blow. Panting, he recovers, his sword stuck in the ground before him. Crouching, he prepares to pledge his loyalty to the young lord. Bowing, he kneels before Leon, showing his respect and devotion. Welcoming him, Leon names him as his house's first knight. With a smile, Walter accepts the honor, ready to serve his new master. A month later, on the day of the War of Noble Houses, tension rises. Before the castle, Leon and his vassals prepare for battle. Facing the army, a messenger shouts that he brings a message for the patriarch. In a speech, Lord Sylvester accuses House Marbus of refusing to surrender. With a steady gaze, Leon simply says that the battle has finally begun. Angered, Pullen curses the enemies, questioning their lack of honor. Marbus advises him not to get carried away, saying that they are afraid. Swallowing hard, Pullen questions the claim, still sensing the danger. He points out that House Sylvester has the advantage in every aspect. With a confident look, Leon says there is still an opening for victory. Pullen then asks if he is referring to the late Sir Kirchall. He reflects that if Kirchall were alive, they would have already surrendered to the enemy. Marbus then comments that mortals are extremely fragile beings. He explains that the slightest change in fortune can cause great turmoil. Pullen agrees, but reminds him that even at half strength, we are still outnumbered. With a smile, Marbus says that a worthy contractor would prevail against their full force. The creature then reassures him, saying that Leon is stronger than he thinks. With a smile, Pullen agrees with Marbus's words about the Lord. The creature agrees, still impressed by the young lord's abilities. Marbus admits that even he is shocked by the boy's talent. On the training field, Leon conjures a great mana spell. From the shadows, energy condenses around the mana crystals. With a serious look, Marbus closely watches the young man's training. Touching the ground, the creature summons a new horde of undead. Skeleton warriors emerge from the ground, ready for the training battle. With his eyes closed, Leon concentrates for the next step of his training. With a flash, he releases his energy, attacking the surrounding skeletons. The skeletons shatter from the impact of the magical energy. With a roar, the skeletons advance, ready for the next phase of training. Marbus reflects that although they are the weakest servants, the skill is remarkable. He is impressed by Leon's ability to read the flow of mana. The creature concludes that the depth of his gift is truly astounding. Calling him a prodigy, Crow compares him to the rising star of the first patriarch. Marbus agrees, saying that in time, he will have everything he desires. The creature then asks if that includes tasty snacks like all-you-can-eat peanuts. According to Marbus, he might even unlock the forbidden magic of time regression. With his eyes closed, Leon concentrates and then slowly opens them. Kneeling on the ground, he begins to stand up after the training ends. He then turns to Marbus, who is in his small form. The creature stares at him with a somewhat nervous and suspicious expression. With a smile, he says the training is done and asks what's next. With a thud, the last skeleton's body falls to the arena floor. With his training complete, Leon asks what the next test will be. With a sigh, Marba tells them to move on for now. Shrouded in energy, they prepare for the next phase of training. Marba then asks if he is familiar with dark magic. With a fixed gaze, he prepares to answer the creature's question. He confirms saying he's had some training in dark magic before. Marba scolds him, telling him to forget the tricks his uncle taught. Reflecting, he agrees that the creature statement makes perfect sense. He ponders that it would be difficult to conquer the continent with just the undead. With a determined look, he prepares to learn true magic. As his power manifests, he agrees, saying that's precisely it. With a snap of his fingers, he prepares for the next lesson. He explains that necromancy is, in essence, a school of dark magic. Floating in his hand, a sphere of dark energy manifests. Praising them, Pullen says they speak like true vassals of the progenitor. With disdain, Marba says he was never a vassal, but a friend. With a smile, the creature says that unlike Marba, he has no regrets. Angered, Marba accuses him of hiding behind his resemblance to Leon. Setting their squabble aside, Leon asks what kind of magic he should learn. Marba then says that before he can learn, there is a prerequisite to be met. With a confused look, Leon prepares to hear what he needs to do. The creature warns that he will need to venture into his own subconscious. Surprised, Leon questions the need to explore his own subconscious. Marbus explains that the depths of his mind are a vast reservoir of mana. With a smile, he says that the war will be child's play with that kind of power. He warns him that dark magic demands a high mana cost. With a serious look, Leon says he has suspected as much for some time. Marba then says there is no reason to worry about the cost. He reveals that he senses in Leon a mana reserve equal to or greater than the progenitors. With a smile, he says it's a relief to hear the news. Marbus warns that the process is not without risks, and he cannot guarantee his safety. Curious, he asks what miraculous method Marbus is proposing. With a cunning look, the creature prepares to reveal its plan. Marbus reflects that there is only one impulse that drives young Leon. He explains that the first step is to exhaust his mana to its very limit. With the path guided by his potential, he says the test can begin. The creature reflects that his primal desire for power is what moves him. Furthermore, Marbus considers it the greatest motivator of all for success. The dark energy begins to dissipate, marking the end of the explanation. With a hand to his head, he says that should be enough. Suddenly, he staggers, supported by Pollen, who cries out for his lord. Desperate, Pollen shouts that they cannot be deprived of his leadership. Annoyed, Marba scolds him, telling him not to disturb the boy and to have faith. With tears in his eyes, Pollen says that despite everything, he is still just a boy. He then asks if Pollen wasn't paying attention to what they said. With a smile, Marba says that Crow, for once, is telling the truth. With his eyes closed, Leon says that with his potential, he will surely return. With tears in his eyes, Pollen replies that he will try to contain his worry. Suddenly, Walter appears, celebrating his success in sword training. Startled, he turns and sees the young master collapsed on the ground. Rushing to his side, he despairs, thinking something terrible has happened. Kneeling beside him, they express their faith that their lord will be fine. Marbus reflects that it's impressive how such a great talent went unnoticed. He concludes that it's no surprise the bloodline was on the verge of collapse. Lying on the ground, Leon remains unconscious, his eyes closed. In a dark space, he finds himself standing, alone, and aimless. Looking to the side, he seems to notice something in the midst of the darkness. Taking a few steps, he walks toward a distant light. As he gets closer, he sees a younger version of himself. Welcoming him, the man says he has been expecting his arrival. With wide eyes, he stares at the figure without saying a single word. Maintaining a calm smile, the man continues to gaze back at him. He then invites him for a walk, saying they have much to discuss. Recognizing the figure, he finally calls him father, still somewhat confused. In a completely desolate landscape, a large city lies in ruins. Seen from above, the two stand amidst the destruction. Then Leon walks toward the man waiting for him on the stairs. Calling out to Leon, he says that his presence means he has chosen to awaken his magic. Leon confirms this, but admits he's not sure how well he's doing. But he continues, saying he has vassals who have joined his cause. With a smile, his father replies that he is very lucky. He then reveals he is just a projection, a kind of magical record. Leon then replies that he now understands the situation. His father explains that his own end was caused by his lack of potential. Even so, he says he can still lend him his aid. In a memory, he fails to earn the respect of Marbas and the Necronomicon. Therefore, he warns that his son must walk a different path than his own. Placing his hands on his shoulders, he explains he created a mana inheritance spell. He finishes by saying this will help him consolidate his power as the patriarch. Leon then questions him, remembering an old warning about taking mana from others. Mentioning the risk, he says the magic could spiral out of control and destroy his mind. His father realizes he was listening, explaining that magical energy isn't easily absorbed. However, he states that his son is an exception, a kind of blank slate. Not understanding, Leon just repeats his words asking what that means. Explaining, he says that since their ancestor, no one has possessed such pure mana. He then appears concentrating a large sphere of power in his chest. All this energy focuses into a single point, becoming extremely dense and unstable. Looking at his son, he says that Leon received the greatest gift of their lineage. Suddenly, the sphere of power begins to distort violently. This power then explodes, sending stone debris flying everywhere. The explosion continues, shattering the surrounding structures even more. Engulfed in this power, he says this is who his son is, but that he must remember. With this demonstration, the entire place begins to shake violently, all while Leon watches everything, and his father just keeps smiling at him. He then places a hand on Leon's head in a gentle gesture. Beneath the sphere, he announces that their little meeting has come to an end for now. Looking to the side, Leon asks if they will meet again in the future. His father replies yes, as he still has much more to teach him. Extending his hand, he approaches the floating sphere of power. Then he transfers it directly into his son Leon's chest. Feeling the power, Leon says he has never felt such immense magical force. This energy then begins to swirl violently around his body. Then, the core of power is finally absorbed completely into his chest. Explaining about the amulet, he reveals its name is Greed and that it will devour everything. He then hands over the object, asking his son to never forget. Leon simply replies that he will remember calling him father. Suddenly, the ground beneath them begins to crack and break apart. With a smile, he says their next meeting will be when his heart desires it most. Bowing, Leon bids farewell to his father, who wishes for that day to come soon. Now alone, Leon remains floating on one of the remaining pieces of rock. In his thoughts, his father says that if wishes came true, his son would shine. He laments, however, that the future is not something he can see. Therefore, he cannot tell if this power will lead him to glory or to his downfall. Finally, he reveals his fear that the outcome will be the worst possible. The scene changes. For figures watch someone lying in bed. Back in the room, Leon finally opens his eyes with everyone around him. Worried, the man with the mustache asks the master if he's sure Leon will wake up. He continues saying Leon is only 14 and he fears permanent effects. Marbas then scolds him, telling him to set aside his worries and have faith. The silver-haired boy agrees, saying their lord will overcome this. The shadowy creature also comments that the old servant worries too much for no reason. Suddenly, a dark energy begins to emanate from Leon's body on the bed. Realizing the situation, Marbas says he now understands the reason for the delayed awakening. Startled, the boy asks what kind of magical force that is, one never seen before. Marbas then jumps onto the bed, settling comfortably on Leon's chest. With a smile, he announces that their lord will return shortly. Standing guard, he warns that the new patriarch will be different from the boy they knew. At that exact moment, Leon's eyes snap open. As he sits up, he looks directly at his vassals who were watching him. His eyes now seem more focused, analyzing the entire situation around him. Asking why his chest feels heavy, he tells the master to get off him. Elsewhere, the silver-haired boy trains by deflecting energy projectiles. He was practicing with Leon, who was creating the manospheres for the training. Later in a hall, Leon appears to be giving orders to some armed guards. The scene changes, showing House Sylvester 4 days before the war. Outside the castle, a huge army of soldiers stands in formation. Seated on his throne, the head of the house watches everything intently. He then stands up, telling everyone that the time has finally come. On the balcony, he commands all soldiers of House Sylvester to listen to him. Giving a speech, he declares that the history of the proud House Marba will turn to dust. Shouting, he commands them to follow him so they can write a new history. Raising his fist, an older man shouts, declaring glory for House Sylvester. At that, his eyes glow and a dark energy begins to pour from his body. From the skies, a red-eyed crow watches the movement below intently. Crossing a misty cemetery, a group of knights advances slowly among the tombstones. Seeing the scene, a man comments that this is the enemy's weak point. At this, the group's leader thanks Kershel for his excellent grasp of the situation. He replies that it's the least he can do to repay his treatment. Still, the leader says he's surprised they don't guard the tombs better. Churchill explains that they are necromancers and avoid destroying burial sites. Sylvester questions if they're still trying to maintain a reputation that's already lost. With a sideways glance, Churchill simply confirms his lord's assumption. Noticing the pause, the lord asks if he has anything to say back. Mounted on his horse, he denies it, saying he has nothing to say. Instead, he suggests they just keep moving forward. Suddenly, Sylvester stops his horse, looking at something in surprise. In the distance, he sees a group of soldiers standing in the middle of the field. Leading the troops, Leon and the silver-haired boy prepare for battle. Standing in the field, the two groups finally meet face to face. Smiling, Leon comments that the opposing lord is a very punctual man. Sylvester then complains, saying he expected a weak point, not hundreds of soldiers. At that moment, he quickly draws his sword from its sheath. Turning around, he attacks Churchill, questioning if there was some kind of mistake. His blade passes through his neck, which begins to dissolve into smoke. His body then completely transforms into a dark, dense energy. He then states that only his master has the right to strike him. His Deca head continues to float in the air surrounded by this energy. All this energy then begins to group together and solidify. Returning to normal, his body rebuilds itself on the horse he was on. With a smile, he comments that it was a rather unique experience. Shocked, Sylvester yells that the blow should have cut his neck. Meanwhile, Leon's troops advance slowly across the battlefield. Furious, Sylvester shouts that the young patriarch will be punished for his insolence. Indignant, he questions if Leon expected to win with so few troops. Leon then calmly replies, no, addressing him as Lord. With a smile, he says that Sylvester would need to be a threat to be insulted. Hearing that, Sylvester is completely paralyzed with rage. He then asks why he thinks he accepted this war. Then he crushes an object in his hand, throwing the remains on the ground. Stating it was to put him in his place, he points down. On the ground, the liquid begins to form dark bubbling puddles. Suddenly, skeletons and undead creatures begin to rise from the ground. Seeing the scene, Sylvester questions if this is necromancy. Leon praises him sarcastically, saying he's as sharp as ever. He then asks why he's surprised by necromancers commanding the undead. Surrounded, Sylvester faces the army of the dead that has formed before him. In a memory, Leon's father asks what the greatest injustice is. He answers it himself, saying it's facing an enemy with no hope of victory. Stating there is no greater suffering, he then questions what the cause might be. Revealing it to be innate talent, he explains it's something of immense depth. Finishing his thought, he says that no variable is more important than that. In the midst of battle, the soldiers are massacred by the army's undead. Charging against them, one of the knights manages to strike an undead with his sword. Even so, the undead troops continue to advance relentlessly across the field. He then says that in the end, the enemy is just an unprepared boy. With his sword in hand, he charges directly towards Leon. But his attack is suddenly blocked by another sword in the way. Protecting his master, the silver-haired boy manages to stop the blow. Annoyed by the interference, he shouts, asking who dares to stand in his way. Apologizing, he warns that he cannot let him near the young master. With a confident smile, he faces the knight without any fear. In another part of the fight, stone golems crush Sylvester's soldiers. Seeing this, Sylvester yells for his company of mages to begin their attack. In response, his mages begin to prepare a spell together. All this magic concentrates on a single point, generating immense energy. Unleashing the attack, they explode several of the undead with the spell. Sylvester then turns and gives an order to his vanguard knights. Shouting for them to attack, he charges forward on his horse against the army. In the midst of combat, his knights fight fiercely against the undead. From a distance, Leon just watches the battle unfold before him. Paving a way, Sylvester continues to fight amidst all the enemies. He then reveals that he is by nature a rather fearful man. Continuing, he says he never truly considered his brothers as family. Leon then asks if he should care about his family drama. Meanwhile, his hand begins to tremble, releasing a dark energy. Sylvester shouts that a spoiled lord would never have the grit to defeat him. Raising his sword, he asks if what the young patriarch desires is revenge. Threateningly, he says Leon will die empty-handed with nothing but regret. In detail, a book with a large eye on its cover is revealed. Leon then responds, warning that there are two flaws in his lord's assumptions. Placing his hand on the book, he offers to explain the situation. At this, the eye drawn on the book's cover begins to react intensely. Holding the closed book, he is enveloped by a dark energy from the object. As Leon faces him, Sylvester reacts with an expression of pure surprise. With the book in hand, he denies wanting revenge and says that Sylvester is weak. A few days earlier, Leon's camp is shown preparing. Gathered around a large map, they plan their battle strategy. While Leon watches intently, Marbus simply licks his paw beside him. Marbus then says he's heard worse, but this strategy is far too risky. But Leon insists that despite the well-chosen location, there's no better plan. He continues, saying it would be foolish to be overly cautious right now. The dark creature then says he has faith in his master's plans. Then he corrects himself, asking why the lion cub should be giving them orders. Agreeing, the silver-haired boy says he will also follow the Lord's strategy. Marba then asks if his opinion will be ignored, but accepts their decision. The man with the mustache then calls for the mobilization of all available forces. Getting up from the table, Leon suggests they start moving. Before they leave, he calls out to Master Marbus, saying he has a question. Showing him the amulet, he asks what Marbus knows about the consequences of using it. At this, the amulet his father gave him is shown in more detail. Grumbling, Marbus says there's no way for him to know and calls Leon rude. He explains that the amulet carries a poisonous and immense power, too great for him. Leon says he imagines it was passed down for a purpose, and Marbus confirms this. For now, he says Leon is as powerful as he needs to be. However, he warns that his potential is a fruit that has not yet ripened. From the side, Leon just listens intently to everything he has to say. Marbus continues, saying that his subjects may be loyal, but they are not infallible. He warns him about betrayal and asks what makes him trust them. After a moment of silence, Leon faces the master before him. Opening his mouth, he finally prepares to give his answer. Back in the present, the book in his hand begins to release more power. At this, all the dark energy concentrates in his body and the book. With a determined look, he prepares to show his full power. Sylvester then asks if Leon thinks himself incapable of taking his life. In response, Leon just glares at him, his eyes filled with fury and power. Feeling the power, Sylvester steps back, completely surprised by the display. Then, a dark energy spreads out, enveloping him and his soldiers. He senses the depth of the mana, an almost unfathomable and pure darkness. Surprised, he doesn't understand how Leon commands such advanced magical control. Calling upon Marbus' servants, Leon gives an order that puts Sylvester on high alert. Clenching his fist, he prepares to stop what's coming. Shouting, he charges forward and orders his men to stop the boy from casting the spell. Leon continues the call, summoning everyone to battle by his side. With the ground trembling, a gigantic army begins to rise from the earth. Ranks of undead, skeletons, and monsters now prepare for combat. Completely stunned, Sylvester stares at the young patriarch's immense summoning power. Across the field, the new soldiers join Leon's troops. Watching the scene, Marbus observes as the creatures rise from the ground. Grumbling, he says the boy is as unruly as his ancestor, Wellen. At that moment, the amulet Leon carries begins to release its power. Amidst the chaos, a monstrous creature roars, charging at the enemies. Then an even larger monster mercilessly attacks one of Sylvester's soldiers. With a single move, it simply tears the knight's body in half. Meanwhile, dark-robed liches prepare a magic spell together. Unleashing the attack, they hit two knights, sending them flying. In desperation, Sylvester shouts that it's a trap, and they were lured here on purpose. Surrounded, he tries to defend himself from the attacks of the new undead army, but he suddenly notices that something is happening to young Leon. On the other side, Leon begins to sweat, feeling the strain of the power. Clutching his chest, he shows signs of being in great pain. Suddenly, he coughs up blood, revealing the heavy toll of the spell. Seeing this, Sylvester orders him to stop, offering to spare everyone's lives. Before he can finish, Leon cuts him off mid-proposal. Flashing back to a memory, Marbus asks why he would take such a risk. Marbus advises him to wait, saying he doesn't have the power to save others. Hearing the advice, Leon just remains silent for a brief moment. Then he turns, calling Master Marbus directly by name. With a sideways glance, Marbus waits for the question he's about to ask. He questions why one must wait for a fruit to ripen before picking it. Back in the present, the battle finally ends with fallen soldiers everywhere. In despair, Sylvester screams as he sees the devastating outcome of the fight for his troops. Leon then calmly walks toward him, stepping over the bodies on the ground. Getting closer, he stops in front of the Lord, who is down on his knees. The two stare intently at each other, with Sylvester on the ground and Leon standing in silence. Just then, the sky darkens and a heavy rain begins to fall on the field. Beneath the storm, Leon stares at Sylvester, who is kneeling on the ground. Sylvester then asks if revenge isn't Leon's true goal here. With a stern expression, Leon confirms that's not his plan at all. Hearing this, Sylvester starts to extend his hand toward him. Bowing his head, he begs for mercy, even saying he doesn't deserve it. Then he promises to never bother House Marbus again and to keep their secret. As the rain falls, Leon just keeps watching the man in silence. Questioning the request, he asks if they were ever close enough for that. In desperation, Sylvester yells that revenge will only create a cycle of hatred. Leon continues to stare at him while Sylvester looks up from below with pure fear. Trying to justify himself, he says he was forced and that Leon should understand. Leon then grabs his collar as he speaks of his duty. Agreeing about duty, Leon says the patriarch's burden is heavy. Believing he has convinced him, Sylvester says he was compelled by his position. Even so, Leon asks why that should be a reason for mercy. Not understanding the question, Sylvester is completely shocked by his response. Explaining it's not personal, Leon says his logic is purely cold and calculating. With his eyes glowing, he simply says goodbye to the Lord. Grinding his teeth, Sylvester mutters in complete agony, unable to believe the situation. Then he shouts that it will be too late by the time Leon realizes what he's done. Without hesitation, Leon attacks him mid-sentence, ending the conversation. After the blow, he continues to stare ahead with an empty expression. With the attack finished, Sylvester's lifeless body falls to the ground. As the battle ends, the undead army begins to disappear. Suddenly, Leon feels a sharp pain, the backlash from the power. Admitting he knew the price, he starts to stagger forward. Losing his strength, he falls to his knees as his energy dissipates. Worried, the silver-haired boy runs to help his lord, but Marbus calms him down, telling him not to worry as it's just exhaustion. Reflecting, Marbus notes that young Leon's talent is equal to his ancestors. This makes him question if a mere boy should be allowed so much potential. He knows there's a monstrosity inside him that not even he can control. Thinking about this, he reflects on the dangerous bargain he made for power. Shifting his focus, he looks at the fallen bodies and the sword on the ground. Just then, a symbol on the chest of a fallen soldier catches his eye. Seeing the mark, he realizes that demons have begun to interfere in human affairs. Meanwhile, the group continues to watch Leon, who remains unconscious in bed. Suddenly, the young lord finally opens his eyes, slowly waking up. Back in the room, the man celebrates that his lord has finally awakened. Asking for forgiveness, he says he has failed, but Marbus responds sarcastically. The creature then comments on the demon's lack of empathy and tact. Sitting up, Leon dismisses the punishment, assuring that Pullen fulfilled his role perfectly. The silver-haired boy reports that the Sylvesters are on the brink of collapse. Celebrating, Pullen says that House Marba has finally risen again under his guidance. With a worried expression, Pullen says there is still another major problem. Leon then calmly asks what this other problem might be. Embarrassed, Pullen prepares to give the bad news to his lord. He reveals that House Marba is almost completely out of money. And to make matters worse, he warns that there is even a huge debt in his name. Marba says he sees no problem, suggesting they charge the Sylvesters for reparations. But Pullen explains that the imperial family has forbidden any request for compensation. Not understanding, Marbus asks for the reason behind this imperial ban. He then explains that the Empire keeps the 3 demonic bloodlines in check. So Leon understands that the Empire prevented them from asking for compensation. Complaining about the mess, Leon asks about the size of their debt. At that, Pullen raises his hand, preparing to reveal the exact number. With a nervous smile, Leon guesses if it's 50 million gold. He just remains silent, keeping a serious expression on his face. Startled, Leon corrects his guess, asking if it's 500 million. Pullen keeps his eyes closed, looking quite discouraged by the situation. Nervously, Leon says the debt can't possibly be 5 billion gold. Apologizing, Pollen says the Lord is correct about the debt. He then continues, preparing to finally reveal the exact amount. Revealing it to be 5 billion, he leaves Leon completely shocked by the news. Changing scenes, a dark-haired man appears with a serious expression. Mounted on his horse, he announces he has arrived in the lands of House Marba. A woman then approaches saying they meet again, Master Ritual. She is Carleen, the head of a criminal organization of ruthless loan sharks. He then informs her that his school's debt to her has already been paid, but she replies that she didn't come here because of his debt. Seeing the thugs, he laments still having to overcome his old problems. Winking at him, she says that's why she advises everyone to read the contract. Impatiently, he says that's enough small talk for now. She then says she suspects they are both here for the same person. Back in the room, Pullen reveals the house's debt is 5 billion gold. At this revelation, both Pullen and young Leon are in complete shock. Suddenly, conversation is interrupted by a knock on the bedroom door. Everyone in the room turns at once, looking toward the door. Saying he'll get it, Pullen turns and walks to see who it is. Just then, Leon feels a chill as if he has a bad feeling about this. Noticing his reaction, the silver-haired boy asks what's wrong. Rushing back, Pullen announces they have unexpected visitors at the mansion. Leon then asks Mr. Pullen exactly how many people have arrived. Stammering a little, he replies that there are 2 people, a man and a woman. At the news, Leon's expression grows even more worried. Later, in another room, Ritual is served a cup of tea. He thanks them and introduces himself as Ritual along with Carleen, the leader of the lunatics. Across the table, Leon and his vassals stare at the 2 visitors. Seated as the new patriarch, he welcomes them to House Marba. With suspicious smiles, the 2 visitors watch the new patriarch closely. Worried, the silver-haired boy asks if this is a good idea, but the creature says their lord is stronger than they think. Carleen then says they've received news of the victory in the War of the Houses. Congratulating him, she says the spoils should be enough to settle the debt. Whispering, Pullen asks how much the house owes her and the lunatics exactly. In response, he's informed that 4 of the 5 billion are owed to them. Staring at Carleen, he remembers she is the head of the largest criminal organization. He also recalls that debtors are sold to dark mages. Smiling, she says she sees he's familiar with their work and gets straight to the point. Leon then asks again about the outstanding balance of the current debt. With a serious look, she prepares to explain the payment terms. She states that she requires an immediate payment of 10% of the total, then she advises him to keep the annual interest rate in mind. Finally, she says she's sure he'll pay as soon as possible. Calculating the interest, he realizes the debt will increase by over 1 billion. Shocked by the terms, he asks who would sign such a ridiculous agreement. Sadly, Pullen reveals that it was Leon's own father who signed it. Devastated by the news, he remembers his father, unable to believe the situation. Ritual then intervenes, saying the Lord deserves some time to celebrate, but Carleen cuts him off, doubting he has that amount on hand. Angrily, she scolds him, saying she hates interruptions in her business. Whispering, Ritual wonders if the price for speaking out of turn is death. Backing down immediately, he says he understood her message perfectly. He then leaves the room, saying he'll return when their conversation is over. Now alone with her, Leon just remains silent, visibly tense. When he starts to speak, she interrupts, telling him to rethink his request. With a smile, she reveals she's already heard it all from his late father. Marbus then suggests he defeat her, but Leon tells him to forget that idea. He then warns him that she is not an enemy he stands a chance against. In silence, Leon just processes the terrible news he has just received. Crow complains that at this rate they'll be left with absolutely nothing. Trying to defend him, Pullen says the Lord acted in the house's best interest. At this, the 2 try to encourage him, saying they have faith in his wisdom. Turning aside, he lowers his head, looking deeply concentrated. Then he turns to Carleen, asking for permission to speak with her. Looking directly at her, he begs her to have mercy on them all. Seeing this, his vassals and even Carleen are left completely speechless. Not understanding his action, the silver-haired boy just calls out his name. Elsewhere, Ritual walks alone down a mansion corridor. With a smile, Ritual seems focused on his interest in the young patriarch. Standing before a painting, he concludes the trip was worthwhile. In a flashback, he's seen talking with Leon in the mansion's hallway. Leon then releases a dark energy, staring at everyone with a fixed gaze. Impressed by his vast mana, he walks on, planning how to recruit the boy. Smiling, he thinks how great Leon would be for his academy. Standing in the hall, he thinks there must be a way to win his favor. In a memory, he extends his hand, beginning to use a spell. At that, a large sphere of energy forms around his body. Maintaining his concentration, he stabilizes the sphere of power in front of him. Inside the sphere, the director begs him not to disappear like that again. Ignoring him, he says he'll explain himself at another time. Saying he has a question, he changes the subject. With a smile, he asks how many gold coins are in the hermit's vault. In disbelief, the director just puts a hand to his forehead in despair. Back in the present, Carlene says she's confused by the Lord's distress. With a simple gesture, she creates a small energy coin on her finger. Tossed onto the table, the coin explodes and shatters his teacup. With a dark look, she assures him they are more calculating than he imagines. Drawing his sword, he shouts, asking how she dares to threaten his lord. Carlene says her fury is reserved only for those who don't pay. Asking if she's made herself clear, she glares at his group with a serious look. Leon then replies that they have absolutely nothing to offer her. Not quite understanding, she asked him to repeat what he just said. He explains that, in the most literal sense, the house's vaults are empty. Processing the information, Carlene continues to stare at the young patriarch in silence. Standing up, she says she now understands why he was trembling like a puppy. She then offers to demonstrate what happens to debtors. Completely terrified, Leon just watches her reaction, unsure of what to do. Suddenly, Rachel bursts into the room, shouting for her to stop immediately. Positioning himself in front of her, he blocks her from continuing her attack. With a tense expression, he stands firm, ready for combat. Furious with the situation, she says she now understands his desperation. Staring at Leon, she watches him with a cruel, menacing smile. Seeing the scene, Rachel yells that this whole situation is pathetic. Rushing to intervene, he tells her to stop stomping on the school's future prospects. Not understanding a thing, Leon just continues to watch the scene unfold. On the side, the silver-haired boy is also completely shocked and confused, but he soon understands, saying that, as expected, Master Leon had it all planned. Looking up, Leon asks about this hermit school he mentioned. Carlene then glares at Rochelle, clearly annoyed by his interference. Standing before her, he keeps trying to calm the situation with his words. Her anger subsiding, she seems to consider his proposal for a moment. Leon then observes their interaction, analyzing his options in this situation. Asking everyone to step back, he says he needs to handle a few things. He then proposes that the hermit school pay the debt in exchange for his recruitment. Looking at Rachel, he asks if that's the proposal on the table. With a smile, Rachel confirms that's exactly the proposal on the table. He then mentions the recent territory battle with House Sylvester. Pointing at him, Rachel says he clearly used undead magic there. Leon questions him, but he says it would have been impossible to win otherwise. Sipping his tea, he says Carlene thought the same thing, which is why she came. She then comments that this is why mages are so sneaky. Admitting it's no secret, she says she thought he had recovered his power. Leon then asks if she came because she thought she could collect the debt. She doesn't deny it, saying she honestly considered the possibility. But she reveals she didn't think the debt would be paid immediately. Marba then comments there must be a mountain of accumulated debt by now. Leon sums it up, saying Riskel wants to recruit him and Carlene wants to settle the debt. He continues, saying he doesn't know how they were so sure about it. Carlene explains that other options like asking for help or hiring mercenaries would be expensive. Laughing at the situation, Leon says he never believed wars were won with money. Explaining his logic, Rachel says his first suspicion was Marbus's unique power. He continues, mentioning the possibility of necromancy having awakened once again in the house. With a smile, Carlene says meeting the continent's genius wouldn't be a bad outcome. Worried, he asks if despite all this, the debt still needs to be paid. Glancing at him from the side, Carlene maintains a very serious expression on her face. Confirming that it does, she asks if he thinks she's a loan shark for nothing. Without hesitation, she pulls out a firearm, showing she's not playing around. Pointing the gun at him, she says she could tell him the real reason. Intervening, Rachel asks for a moment alone with the talent he wants to recruit. Agreeing to his request, she warns that her priority is getting the debt paid. Turning to leave, she begins to walk toward the door. With a sigh of relief, Rachel comments that they barely escaped that situation. Still suspicious, Leon warns that Rachel isn't someone he can trust either. Questioning his nature, Leon asks if he happens to be non-human. With a dark smile, Rachel just stares at him without answering question. Rachel then replies, saying the same goes for young Leon. Pointing to Marba, he accuses him of siding with a demon. With a smile, Marba says he is a mage who can see him. At that, he begins to release his power, revealing his true form. In his real form, he asks what ritual is to possess such power. Unfazed, Ritual also reveals his form, complete with horns and a tail. Assuming his true appearance, he just stares at the demon before him. With a surprised look, Marbas recognizes him as a surviving dragon. Leon then asks about the dragons, and Marbas confirms it by the horns and tail. Ritual says he was also curious about a demon traveling with a human. He continues, saying he doesn't know the reason, but it seems connected to the first chief. Reassuring everyone, Leon says that Marba is on humanity's side. Confirming this, Marba says he may be a demon, but he doesn't share their will. Ritual then retorts that he would have no reason to meddle in human affairs. Changing the subject, Leon says he'll ask him a question then. Staring at Ritual, he asks what his duties would be upon joining the school. Ritual then explains that their school is fundamentally reclusive by nature. He continues saying Leon will take on commissions and elevate his status. Marbas then questions him, asking him to state the real reason behind it. Surprised, he says they are all quite perceptive about the situation. Looking at Leon, he says he must not join any other school. With his eyes glowing, he continues to explain the condition they offer. Marbas then asks if the intention is to stop the other schools from growing. Admitting that's true, he says it's one of the reasons, but not the main one. He then places a red object on the table, preparing to explain. Revealing the truth, he says that one of the other two schools worships demons. Hearing the news, Marbas concludes that they have finally started to move. Irritated, he regrets not awakening sooner and asks what their goal is. Facing the group, Ritual remains silent before answering. Finally, he reveals that their goal is the resurrection of the demon King Baal. In a flashback, the anti-demon war is shown in all its fury. Amidst the chaos, the human King Solomon meets his end in the heat of battle. Gripping the hilt of his weapon, he prepares for one last attack. Using all his power, he unleashes immense energy for the strike. In another scene, a chained demon is seen being controlled against its will. Next, an army of demon skeletons is shown. With red eyes, the demons charge into combat without a second thought. Seen from the side, a demon summons a magical book of immense power. Raising the book, he uses its power to summon creatures for the battle. With a hand on the book, he opens it, ready to release the magic. Suddenly, several demons are defeated and fall lifeless to the ground. Back in the present, Ritual explains that King Solomon sealed Baal. He continues, saying that over time, the seal's power has weakened, reaching a point where it wouldn't be strange for a demon to awaken. From the side, Leon comments that he heard the Emperor has lost his mind. Recalling that the Emperor was brilliant, he asks if this is related. Ritual confirms that it is, saying that demons always exploit the smallest cracks. He then says that since Leon has a demon, he should know best. Leon confirms the story, recalling that many races were sacrificed in the war. He then asks if the reason is that the demon's crest was found. Confirming the suspicion, Ritual asks him to join the Eremita school. Marbas warns him that this will require a lot of money, but Ritual refuses to help. Worried about the debt, he asks if there's anything that can earn him gold. After a moment, Ritual seems to think of a possible solution to the problem. Suddenly, he says he's thought of a good way to get money. He then mentions the Adventurers Guild and the person closest to the master. Suggesting he take on commissions, he says he'll be able to take high-value quests. Shocked by the amount, Leon imagines himself earning 10 million at once. Asking him to put in a good word, he bows, making Marbas grumble. Defending its master, the creature scolds Marbas for insulting the Lord. It then reveals that the person who insulted its master was the old butler. At this, Marbas looks embarrassed, averting his gaze. Ritual then calls for Carleen, knowing she's listening to the conversation. Asking for help, he calls for her to join their conversation. Opening the door, she complains that Ritual knows her too well. Sitting at the table, she stares at Marba, who is flying in front of her. Rachel then asks him to introduce himself to their guest. With a serious expression, he reveals himself as the demon who serves the Lord. Tired of the situation, she says nothing good comes from getting involved with him. With a smile, Ritual just continues to watch everyone's reaction. Later, in a forest, the group walks together heading towards the guild. Complaining, Ritual says it's the least he can do for someone who owes 4 billion. Leon then asks what kind of place the Adventurers Guild is. Carleen explains that it's simply a place to pick up and complete commissions. She continues, saying that you can form parties and split the earnings. She finishes by saying that the skilled ones can earn millions at once. Marba then comments that it's where moths burn their lives away. Laughing, Rachel says it's not necessarily such a cruel place. He continues, saying that with good results, one can become a knight or a mage. Interested, Leon asks them to explain more about the emblems and ranks. Rachel then asks Carlene to explain, but she gets annoyed by the order. She explains that mercenaries are divided into 5 power ranks. She continues, saying that the stronger you are, the higher the level of the commissions. Following the logic, he asks if becoming black rank is the best way. Rachel agrees but warns that it's so impossible he didn't even mention it. He explains that there are fewer than 10 black ranks on the entire continent. Arriving in the city, the group walks towards their final destination. The entrance to the place is shown in detail with very medieval architecture. Seen from above, they stop in a square watching the city's hustle and bustle. Carlene warns that imperial law makes it difficult for minors to become adventurers. Standing in the square, Rachel tells Carlene not to be a killjoy. They then approach the sign indicating the tavern entrance. Already inside, Leon suggests they get on with the test. Seeing the interior, he's surprised and wonders what kind of place this is. Entering the crowded hall, he asks if this is the Adventurers Guild. With Marba on his shoulder, he carefully observes the entire guild environment. At a table, a white-haired woman notices the group's arrival. She then comments that it looks like a noisy customer has just walked in. Sitting in a relaxed manner, she continues to watch the movement in the main hall. Holding her cup, she stares at the newcomers with a less than friendly expression. Inside the tavern, several adventurers are talking and laughing at their tables. In a corner, 2 men are chatting, smiling, and enjoying their drinks. Meanwhile, Carlene carefully observes her surroundings. Suddenly, the 2 men fall silent, seeming to notice something strange. Looking at the door, one of them asks if that isn't the famous Carlene. Looking at Leon, he compares him to a hungry wildcat. They also recognize Rachel, wondering what he's doing there at the guild. One of the men comments that he looks young, but he's already become a master. Drinking from his mug, another adventurer complains that life is so unfair. Rachel and Carlene continue walking through the hall, ignoring the comments. With a smile, Rachel says it seems she really annoyed them. Ignoring him, she tells him to stop talking and walk faster. Looking around, Leon asks where the person they're looking for is. He then comments that there doesn't seem to be anyone strong around, but Marbas interrupts, warning that he can feel a mana presence watching them. Suddenly, a man with an eye patch turns his head, looking startled. At that, the group stops walking, looking attentively to the side. A man with blonde hair and a backpack stares at them intently. From the side, Leon seems to have noticed someone's presence in the hall. An energy spreads, causing everyone to stop and look at the group. Looking back, Leon realizes they've finally found them. Without hesitation, the white-haired woman charges forward and attacks the group. Drawing their weapons, the 2 women face off, ready to fight. She then points her sword, stopping the attack in its tracks. The other adventurers watch the scene, surprised by the sudden commotion. Pointing her weapon, Carlene says she's gotten more aggressive since the last time. With a single command, the white-haired woman calls her allies. She then scolds Carlene, saying she warned her not to use her name. Looking to the side, she seems to call out to Carlene, waiting for a response. Approaching her, Leon asks if she's the strongest person there. She asks who he is to interfere in their conversation. Marbas then warns that he is a monster more dangerous than the others. Introducing himself, he says he is Leon von Marbas, the young heir of the house. He continues, saying that's what other people call him. Elsewhere, the silver-haired boy observes the hallway intently. Now in a separate room, the group sits down to talk peacefully. Sipping her tea, the woman says she heard the head of the house has changed. Carlene and Rachel look at each other, seemingly analyzing the situation carefully. She continues, saying she didn't think it would be just a child. Carlene then says his magical talent is certain and that she vouches for it. Rachel asks why a noble would come to an adventurer's guild like this one. She then comments that it's also strange to see him with a demon. Annoyed, Marbas demands she apologize to his master immediately. Pleased with the attitude, he says the black cat has finally come to his senses. Looking at the woman, he says he wants to work at the Adventurers Guild. Carlene says that's the main feature of their guild. Rachel says there's no reason to refuse and asks for a chance. Agreeing, she warns that there's a chance he might not survive. Leon then replies that those from Marba live closer to death. He continues saying Rachel warned him that not paying the debt would be worse. Agreeing, she says she'll give him a chance to prove his worth. Pouring a liquid, she begins to prepare a kind of spell. She draws a pattern on the floor with the liquid forming a grid. At that, the pattern expands, covering the entire floor of the room. Looking at the lines, he is impressed by what he's seeing. Surprised, he recognizes it as a high-level teleportation magic. She then comments that he seems to be a very capable mage. Suddenly, several armored knights appear ready for battle. The group is then transported to a completely different room. Standing up, she says the test he will take is simple. Pointing to the statues, she says only one of them has mana. She then informs him that he has 30 minutes to complete the test. With a serious expression, Leon simply replies that he will do his best. Announcing that it's starting, she asked Carlene to prepare the hourglass. Complaining, Carlene says she'll only help this one time since it's a nuisance. Using her magic, she creates a large hourglass to mark the time. Alone in the hall, Leon walks among the enormous statues of knights. Looking up, he analyzes each of the statues very carefully. With her arms crossed, she watches him, seeming to have forgotten something. She then warns him that the real statue moves and will attack him. Suddenly, all the statues begin to move, ready to attack. One of the statues strikes, forcing Leon to dodge. He leaps back, escaping the blow that shatters the stone floor. Turning, he braces himself for more attacks from the other statues. In a combat stance, he faces the army of stone knights. From a distance, Carlene watches the scene looking unimpressed. She then remarks that the test was a bit too harsh this time. Surrounded, he seems confused, unsure how to react to the attack. Carlene explains that the younger they are, the easier they break. She concludes that his chances of passing this test are almost zero. Marbus says the statue's power isn't much, but finding the golem is impossible. He continues, explaining that the mana concentration in the area is too low. Commenting on the difficulty, he says that even a dumb lion would know that. Annoyed by the comment, Marbus just glares at him from the side, silent. As the statues close in, Marbus seems to be trying to speak with his master. Breaking into a cold sweat, Leon glances to the side, seemingly focused on something specific. She then comments that giving the guild symbol to a child is dangerous. The white-haired woman observes the statues, reflecting on the fragility of talent. Suddenly, Leon leaps towards one of the statues ready to strike. Seen from above, he charges at one of the knight statues surrounding him. His eyes glow as he focuses completely on his next move. Unfazed, the statue just stares back, its red eyes glowing. Extending his hands, he begins to use his magic, releasing a dark energy. With a swift movement, he dodges one of the knight's attacks. Using his power, he takes control of a few statues, making them fight for him. Now under his command, 3 statues turn against the others, attacking them. Seeing his plan work, he concludes this is the most efficient way. From a distance, the group watches, surprised by his strategy. Impressed, Marbus questions his master's actions, unable to believe what he's seeing. Explaining his technique, he says it's one of the few spells he knows. Conjuring several energy spears, he says that for now, this will be enough. Using his magic, he summons several dark spears ready to attack. Shocked, Marbus recognizes the spell he is about to use. Surprised, the two realize he knows the black spear they're familiar with. From above, the spears rain down at high speed, targeting the statues in the hall. The attack causes a series of explosions, destroying several statues at once. Amid the wreckage, Leon observes the result of his devastating attack. In disbelief, Marbus just stares at him, calling his master a madman. Picking up a piece of rock, she notes his mana control is excellent. She then recalls that the purpose of the test is to find the right statue. Looking at the damage, she concludes that, as expected, it looks like a failure. Richel then comments that there's only one way left to pass the test. He says that if he uses that method, they must recruit him immediately. Carlene just watches, surprised by the turn of events. With his eyes closed, he begins to summon the wandering dead from the heavens. As a descendant of Marbus, he summons them to join him. With his eyes glowing, he prepares to reveal his true strategy. Commanding them to open their eyes, the debris begins to react to his command. All the stone fragments then begin to float in the air. Next, the debris starts to come together again, forming something new. Shocked by the scene, the two women watch his power unfold. It's revealed that Leon had planned everything from the start of the test. He explains that since mana is life force, it should respond to necromancy. Impressed, they conclude they found someone far greater than they imagine. Admitting it's impressive, Carlene seems to be changing her mind about him. The white-haired woman says his idea was brilliant and quick-witted. Surprised by the outcome, she can't hide her admiration for the boy. Approaching him, she asks how he managed to do that. Explaining his logic, he says he just killed it and then resurrected it. She then questions him about what led him to that conclusion. He finishes by saying that a golem isn't an artifact but a creature. Touching the golem, he points out that this is the one with the mana. He then points to the creature, showing the result of his spell. With time to spare on the hourglass, he asks if he has finally passed the test. She praises him, saying he's incredible. He replies that it's a virtue he will gladly accept. Announcing that he has passed, she says she will give him a silver emblem. Surprised, Rachel comments that this journey is full of unexpected experiences. The blonde man then asks Marba if his master isn't extraordinary. Full of pride, Marba leaps onto his head as the man laments about being useless. Now standing beside the golem, he silently observes the hall. In a flashback, a person's spirit is seen floating in the air. The silver-haired boy then explains what a golem is. He continues, saying they are products of artificial magic engineering. But he warns that some creatures with a core can occur naturally. Smiling, he explains that Leon managed to tell the difference between them. Proudly, he celebrates the achievement, praising the young master's intelligence. She then comments that it was a very unusual case to witness. Admitting defeat, she says he is strong and Leon just thanks her. He then asks how much he could earn with a silver emblem. Rachel replies that it depends, but he could earn around 3 million. But Carlene warns him that to pay off the debt, he'll need a gold emblem. Hearing the news, Leon seems to understand the difficulty of his situation. Rachel then comments that it's been a while since the guildmaster has given out a silver emblem. With her eyes closed, she announces that his first mission will be issued tomorrow. Thanking her for the consideration, Leon bows in respect to the guildmaster. With a snap of her fingers, she reverses the teleportation spell. The room then begins to freeze, undoing the entire test summoning. Back in the original room, the group observes the sudden return. The knight statues return to their original motionless positions. Shocked, he can't believe everything returned to normal with just a gesture. He continues saying her precision and control are incredible. Rachel then turns to Leon asking if they should go too. Alone in the room, she sits in a chair reflecting on the test. With a pensive look, she continues to process the recent events. In a memory, Leon appears surrounded by the lances ready to attack. She says she was sure it would all end there, but he acted differently. She continues, saying that distinguishing the golems shouldn't have been difficult. Reflecting, she wonders why he didn't do it from the start. Reaching a conclusion, she realizes he did it all to hide his strength. She then stands up, seeming to have made an important decision. Reflecting on the Marbus family, she notes the rise of a monster. But she says that what bothers her most is something else. In the night sky, the full moon appears between some clouds in the dark. She then reveals it was his eyes, which seemed quite inorganic. Looking at the moon from the balcony, she keeps wondering what he sees. Back in the room, the group remains gathered around the large table. Handing him a scroll, she announces his first official mission. He then takes the rolled-up scroll in his hands to read it. Reading the mission, he discovers it takes place in the city of Sealshire. Surprised, he asks if the mission is to investigate the Pope's corruption. The guildmaster confirms it is, explaining the situation in the capital. She continues, saying that news about the Pope's corruption has spread. Carlene then questions if the mission isn't too difficult for a beginner. The guildmaster turns and glares at Carlene for her interference. Afterward, she says it's a privilege and that he should be able to handle it. Rachel comments that it doesn't seem like they have the option to negotiate. If the mission helps him rank up, he says he's fine with anything. She then warns that if he gives up, he'll have to start over from scratch. Looking at the two of them, she asks them to help him on the mission. Annoyed, Carlene asks if her opinion doesn't matter in the decision. Thanking her with a bow, he says his father taught him to be this way. Sitting at the table, he talks with Carlene, explaining his reasons. The blonde man praises his master, saying he knows how to handle people. Confused, the silver-haired boy says the young master is human. Disliking the comment, Marbus glares at him with a threatening look. Confidently, he assures them they will succeed as they need money. Changing scenes, the interior of a large luxurious church is shown. In front of an altar, a golden bowl reflects two kneeling nuns. With his back turned, an older man watches the two nuns praying at the altar. With a sad expression, he turns around and apologizes in a low voice. Inside the bowl, a vision reveals the silhouette of two figures. It says that the miraculous saint will be one of the two daughters. While one will rise like the sun, the other will face total destruction. The vision also predicts that the two will eventually become one. In a reflection, the two identical nuns face each other with glowing eyes, and that one will die so they can become two in the end. Kneeling at the altar, the two sisters continue to pray in complete silence. The continent's religions are divided into two main factions. One is the church that worships Arden, the goddess of world creation. The other worships Baal and the 72 demons among other gods. It is known as the cult of demonic restoration. Between the two, humans generally worship the Church of Arden. Humans chosen to wield divine power are called followers. Above all else is the figure of the Saint of Miracles. The scene changes to a carriage traveling down a dirt road. Inside, a man in a hat carefully watches the landscape. Seated, the group talks as the carriage continues its journey. Leon and his vassals are all gathered traveling to their new mission. Arriving at a tavern, a man asks if they want to go to Sealshire. The group then gathers around the table talking with the man. He explains that the city is in bad shape after the war. Rochelle then asks if there's a particular reason for them to go there. Understanding the situation, Carlene raises her hand and gestures to her group. At that, one of her henchmen hands her a bag of coins. She then slams the bag of gold coins onto the table. The man tells them they don't need to ask why and offers other options. Without hesitation, he says he'll go if his safety is guaranteed. Aside, he thinks that he came for the money but questions the situation. The city of Selechi is shown, completely in ruins after the war. The man explains that a new cardinal was supposed to help, but everything fell apart. He continues, saying that all of this is related to divine power. The lack of power is because a new saint has not appeared. Without the saint, he says the continent will lose its divine grace. With a worried expression, he continues to explain the situation to them. Inside the carriage, Leon explains the mission is to expose the Pope's corruption. The silver-haired boy comments that something about this mission smells dangerous, but Leon calms him, telling him not to worry about the obstacles. Richel agrees, but warns that the human nations have grown stronger. Marba then says that careless preparation could lead to injury. Commenting on the Pope, she says that no human is free under Arden. She continues saying that no new saint with divine power has appeared. Richel reveals that the Saint of Miracles descends from the Pope's bloodline. He then comments that there is an even more serious problem in this situation. Leon explains that two daughters were born when there should have been only one. With his eyes gleaming, he says that only one of them can inherit the power. Confused, the boy asks if there's no way for both of them to receive the power. But Marbus explains that power passed through blood is always for one person only. Without a word, Leon just listens to the conclusion that one of them will die. Richel then comments that the more he thinks about it, the stranger it all seems. Watching Leon, he seems to reflect on the nature of the young patriarch. The scene changes again. The wheels of a carriage stop on a road. The coachman then turns around and announces they have finally arrived. Arriving in the city, the carriage stops in front of a large castle. Alone, a man in a suit walks down a long, luxurious hallway. With a serious expression, he continues walking without stopping for a moment. Stopping in front of a large door, he prepares to enter the room. He informs His Holiness that those who requested the mission have arrived. From the side, a voice asks if they are the ones he was talking about. The Pope then asks if it's true they can avoid surveillance. The man confirms, saying this must be kept an absolute secret. He then reveals that this whole charade is to save his daughter. Back in the city, Leon's group walks carefully through the streets. A man approaches and introduces himself as Glazer, the city's head butler. Richel says they sent a request concerning the Pope's corruption. Confirming this, he says he didn't expect the head of the school to come. Laughing, Richel informs him that he won't be the one carrying out the mission. Stepping in, Leon says he will be the one responsible for this task. With a serious expression, Leon faces the butler awaiting a response. Concerned, the butler questions if he isn't too young for the mission. Leon then shows his emblem, proving his capability for the task. Surprised, he recognizes the silver emblem of the Adventurers Guild. Looking to the side, Leon asks if the two women are enemies. Without answering, the butler just stares at him, seeming to ponder the question. He then remembers the two identical nuns who were praying in the church. The two sisters appear, dressed in their church nun habits. Outside, the two continue their conversation, staring at each other in silence. He suggests they move to a different location to talk. Later, in a private room, their serious conversation continues. Sitting around a large table, they prepare to discuss the matter. With a serious expression, the butler seems resigned to the situation. Leon stares at him, waiting for him to start talking about the mission. The butler says there's no way such a young mage can help them. Leon then warns him it's better not to show any emotional changes. Asking if his name is Glazer, he stares at him with an intense gaze. Startled by the question, the butler backs away, surprised by his attitude. He then realizes Leon is using telepathy to speak with him. Surprised, he wonders how such a young mage can use this magic. He tells him not to hide anything, revealing that he knows the mission came from the Pope. With a smile, he prepares to ask the most important question. He then asks the butler to tell him about the real mission. Realizing he can't deceive him, the butler seems to make a decision. Clasping his hands, he prepares to finally reveal the whole truth. The butler then says that in that case, he will explain the mission. Meanwhile, the group silently watches the conversation, waiting for the explanation. Back at the church, the Pope watches the two nuns praying at the altar. With a worried expression, he seems quite distressed by the situation. In a vision, the silhouettes of the two nuns are shown in a sphere. It's revealed that the miraculous saint will be one of the two daughters. While one will ascend, the other will face a fate of pure destruction. The prophecy says the two will become one, and the sisters stare at each other. It is also said that one must die for them to become two. Beside them, two other priests seem to watch the scene from afar. As they pray, a symbol glows on each of their chests. Desperate, he says that if the prophecy is true, he's in trouble. Worried, he asks what will happen to his daughters in the future. She says it seems the power was divided between them. She continues, saying that for the power to be complete, one side needs shock. He asks if one of them needs to die for the power to be complete. Suddenly, the church door opens, revealing the arrival of visitors. 3 men walk down the aisle towards the Pope and his advisor. Stopping in front of them, the group's leader prepares to speak. He introduces himself as Caliban, commander of the Imperial Knights. By order of the Emperor, he says he brings a decree for His Holiness. Opening the scroll, he begins to read the Emperor's order. He warns that there cannot be 2 sons under the same sky. When the daughters come of age, one will become the Saint of Miracles. The other, to complete the saint's power, will face a cruel fate. She will be burned at the stake in the name of the fallen saint. Desperate, he yells, asking if they are ordering him to burn his own daughter alive. With a smile, he says it's an order and to think of it as a sacrifice. Turning his back, he tells his men to leave the premises. Unable to believe it, the Pope continues to stare at the scene in great fear. Kneeling at the altar, he wonders why God has abandoned him like this. Before the statue, he laments having to go through such trials. Looking at the statue, he wonders why she took his family. Crying, he continues to lament, unable to contain his sorrow. The 2 daughters, their eyes closed, also cry at the news. Back at the tavern, the group continues to discuss the mission details. Leon just listens, processing all the information he has received so far. Ritual summarizes, saying that the saint hasn't appeared on the continent for decades, and that the saint born of the direct lineage was a twin splitting the power. The butler confirms this, explaining the prophecy's meaning. He then reveals that he is there to save them both on his own accord. Surprised, Leon knows he is going against the will of the Empire. Clenching his fists, he seems determined to follow through with his plan. Leon then asks to speak with someone other than Mr. Glazer. Asking to be excused for a moment, Leon prepares to speak with them. In a separate room, only he and the 2 nuns are present. He approaches the 2 sisters who are sitting side by side. Kneeling in front of them, he prepares to ask a question. Facing the 2 of them, he asks if either of them thinks this is okay. Looking at them, he asks if either of them thinks it's okay to die. Marba scolds him, but he says this is the most efficient way. One of the sisters says that in the worst-case scenario, one of them must die. On the other side of the door, the group listens attentively to the conversation. Looking at the 2 of them, he repeats the question, waiting for an answer. Not knowing what to say, the 2 of them just stare at him frightened. She explains that people called them that, but they never saw themselves that way. Over a burning city, an army of demons flies through the skies. Amidst the chaos, people run in desperation, fleeing the demons' attack. From the balcony, the Pope complains that the Saint of Miracles has abandoned him. Looking out at the city, he wonders what they should do without the light. A knight then rushes to protect him, warning that it's too dangerous. Screaming, he curses the demon, completely consumed by the fury of the moment. With his eye glowing, he vows he will never forgive them for the attack. With his back to the fire, he faces the army accusing them of betraying God's will. Back in the present, he is sitting by his daughter's bedside. With a smile, she says it's a relief that everything turned out well. She continues saying that now her daughter can become the new saint, but he warns that every role comes with its own heavy burden. Sitting beside her, he says that's exactly what he's afraid of. He continues saying she will be worshipped and used as a saint for others. The woman then touches his hand, trying to calm him down somehow. Sitting beside her, he holds her hand tightly. Worried, she comforts him saying the child will be strong and that she will raise her. Smiling, she asks him to name the child Sky as a wish. She explains the name means she will bring a heavenly life. Startled by the suggestion, he stares at her with an expression of pure fear. She then reveals she never saw her mother say that in person. She explains that her mother used all her strength giving birth to the two of them. In the end, she reveals her mother lost her life in the process. She says her beginning was a tragedy and so will be the end. Wearing a mask, she says no one can change the sisters' fate. She concludes saying that, yes, that's all that awaits them. Back in the present, the two sisters continue to stare at Leon nervously. The whole group gathers around the table waiting for the final decision. One of the sisters says she has already decided, offering herself for the sacrifice. The other then says no. She is the one who should die for being born first. Leon just watches the scene, listening to their argument in silence. She continues, saying it's better for someone defective like her to die. Crying, the older sister asks her not to say such things. Leon admits he never learned what to do in a situation like this. He then asks if it doesn't matter if both of them end up dying, but Marbus warns him that his task is to save them both or he won't get paid. Smiling, he says that, as expected of Marbus, he's touched on an important point. He then tells them to look for a way to save them both from the situation. They ask that no harm come to their father as he is innocent. Asking for details, he asks when one of them is scheduled for the sacrifice. She then replies that the ceremony will take place in just 2 days. She continues, saying that if there's no plan, she will sacrifice herself. Shocked by the decision, the younger sister screams, calling out to her. Thinking about the deadline, he says they need to check for a fundamental solution to this. Ritual then suggests they check the mark granted to the Saint of Miracles. Asking to see the mark, Leon realizes its location seems to be a problem. One of the sisters asks everyone except Leon to leave for a moment. Carlene just closes her eyes, saying it doesn't matter where the mark is. Pushing Rachel out, she stops him from seeing what's about to happen. As the others are pushed out, she closes the door to ensure privacy. Now alone in the room, Carlene crosses her arms and just watches the scene. The two sisters then look at each other, agreeing to finally show them the mark. Turning their backs, they slowly begin to remove part of their clothes. They then turn around again, exposing the upper part of their bodies. On their chests, a golden cup-shaped mark is finally revealed. He says it seems impossible to extract or transfer the power with magic. Marbus then warns that from what he can see, there is only one way. With a serious look, Leon confirms that one of the two will have to die. Marbus then comments that prophecies and fate are truly terrifying. He continues, saying that they ruin the lives of two people. Noticing something, he says that this is a look he's never seen before. Lying on the table, he gets closer and asks if the master is angry. Elsewhere, a square is being prepared for the ceremony. Sitting down, the prince comments that the event is starting now. He continues, saying that the Saint of Miracles is finally being born, but the knight points out that, like a witch, a woman will be burned. On the other side, a hooded man complains that they had to wait too long. Standing in the square, Leon and Marbus watch the crowd intently. He wonders if it's right to save the one who wants to live and kill the one who wants to die. Not understanding, Marbus asks what he's talking about right now. Looking at the two of them, he reveals that one of the twins lied. Marbus just stares at him, seemingly in disbelief of his master's conclusion. Holding a stone, he says that perhaps only he can feel the truth. He reflects that one of them wants to live while the other doesn't mind dying. That's why he's conflicted, clutching his hand tightly to his chest. He then needs to decide which of the two sisters he should really save, and consequently which one he will have to let die in the end. Marba then asks if he's going to decide this only on the day of the ceremony. Replying, he says that no one ever taught him what to do in these situations. He finishes, admitting he doesn't know how to act in a situation like this. In the square, the sacrificial pyre is prepared at the center of everything. With his back turned, the prince observes the scene, ready for the ceremony to begin. He then turns, starting to walk toward the center of the square. Greeting everyone, he introduces himself as Louis von Arkheim. He says he has come in the emperor's name to attend the birth of the saint. The crowd in the square celebrates the news, shouting in celebration. With a smile, he observes the reaction of the people around him. The citizens, however, seem confused and worried by the announcement. He warns that the darkest night will come before them all, but he assures them it will pass and they will welcome the saint. To do so, he says they will burn the witch known as the Nameless One. The two look at each other, seemingly agreeing with the plan in motion. He explains that the same goes for the Saint of Miracles. The knight says the birth of the two was a scheme of the devil. He finishes by saying, the emperor will perform the sacrifice in front of everyone. With his eyes gleaming, he asks if anyone present has any objections. The crowd and the two sisters just watch in silence without reaction. The Pope approaches, bringing one of the daughters for the ceremony. The prince comments that what they are doing is a waste of beauty. With a smile, he says she'd be worth having as his concubine. Hearing the comment, the Pope clenches his fist tightly, furious. One of the advisors then touches his shoulder, asking him to calm down. The prince and his knight just watch the scene with a smile. The two face off, the Pope clearly angered by his attitude. Seen from above, they continue their conversation, standing in the middle of the square. The Pope then asks if there is any hope of saving the children, but Leon replies that it's something close to impossible to do. He says that's why he has a question for the Pope. The butler then asks if he has something he wishes to say. Looking to the side, he calmly begins to ask his question. Leon then turns to the Pope, preparing to ask his question. In another room, the two sisters walk toward the exit. One of them consoles the other, saying it's okay not to cry so much. She continues, saying that if someone had to be sacrificed, it should be her. Crying, the other one wonders if the mere fact of being born is a sin. The older sister then says that maybe it really is a sin to be born. She continues saying that, in the end, they must follow the prophecy. She says that at least this time they can choose who will die. Suddenly, a knight shouts to restrain the witch and tie her up. The older sister just watches with a serious and resigned expression. Without hesitation, she says she will go, offering herself for the sacrifice. Desperate, the younger sister just cries, unable to say anything. In her thoughts, she repeatedly apologizes to her sister. She admits she wasn't honest about her feelings and desires. Thinking to herself, she is grateful that her sister is dying in her place. Suddenly, Leon casts a spell, making one of the sisters faint. In shock, the other one just cries, unable to react to what happened. She then falls to the floor, unconscious beside her collapsed sister. Leon just observes the scene with a serious and focused expression. Marbus asks if this is the best choice he can think of. Looking at the two of them, he confirms it is, but it doesn't feel like the best. In the public square, one of the sisters is tied up ready for the sacrifice. A man approaches with a torch preparing to light the pyre. He then throws the torch onto the wood, igniting the sacrificial flames. The pyre begins to burn with flames rising quickly. The prince celebrates, saying the time for the saint's birth has come. The knight beside him asks, who would dare doubt the first prince? With a smile, he says that whoever doesn't fall in line will meet their death. Engulfed by the flames, the woman screams in pain, being burned alive. From a distance, Leon watches the sacrifice, the fire reflecting in his eyes. The group is now gathered wearing white hooded cloaks. Carlene questions the method, asking if he is sure about this. Laughing, Richel says it is neither a success nor a failure. Leon says that either way he just wants them to survive. As the woman burns, he wonders what emotion is necessary to be a father. He continues saying that even so he wants his daughter to live. He says that even if it means dying, he wants her to live right before his eyes. Leon concludes that maybe one day he will understand this indescribable emotion. Engulfed in flames, she says they must have recognized her wish. In the background, Leon watches the scene, recognizing the person at the stake. Relieved, she says it's all right as she is only being punished. Crying, she admits she wasn't a good person and was afraid to die. She tried to hold on to her sister's kind words to keep going. The crowd watches as the fire consumes the woman at the stake. Pointing to the pyre, the prince shouts for them to throw more oil. The guards then throw more fuel, making the flames roar even higher. Consumed by the fire, she apologizes to her sister in her final moments. Her eyes widen in pain as the fire engulfs her completely. In a flashback, Leon and the Pope are talking in his office 2 days earlier. With a serious expression, Leon begins to ask the Pope his question. He asks if he wishes to save the daughter who wants to live or the one who is prepared. Confused, the Pope asks if such a thing can be distinguished between the two. Confirming that he can, Leon says it's hard to explain, but it's possible. The Pope just stares at him, pondering the difficult decision before him. He then says that if Leon has the eyes to see, he must act. With a serious expression, he says to save the child he wishes to give life to. Back in the square, the Pope and his daughter watch the sacrifice from a distance. Crying, she covers her mouth, unable to believe what she is seeing. The carriage waits for them with the flames of the pyre in the background. Leon and Carlene watch the scene standing next to their waiting carriage. Staring at the fire, he asks why they think that happened. Inside the carriage, Leon and his vassals discuss the events. Not understanding, Marba asks what he means by that question. He then questions why the Pope tried to save the one who was ready to die. Outside, the nun watches the carriage looking quite sad. Marba says he's asking something obvious and meaningless. Leon explains that he wanted them to feel the weight of life. Agreeing, Marba says that whoever survives lives for those who couldn't. Leon then asks what happens when the moment of choice arrives. Marbas explains that the one who chose to die knows the value of that choice, but he says the one who wanted to live might never truly understand. Leon says his family taught him that gratitude fades easily. From the side, the nun clenches her fist, looking determined in her decision. The silver-haired boy then says that's exactly why. He wonders where their anger should be directed. Leon says there's nothing to be done as the situation is inevitable. Ritual explains that the continent needs a saint of miracles. Carlene adds that all eyes are on the saint. The nun then walks down a dark hallway with a man behind her. Tired, she says that now everything is finally over. She continues saying her power as a saint has been completed. Suddenly, eyes widen. Surprised by something unexpected, the group watches the scene shocked by what is happening. Confused, Rachel asks if the power isn't complete yet and what happened. The nun then looks at her chest where the mark is glowing intensely. Running to her father, she calls out to him, not understanding what's going on. The prince warns that the situation is getting out of their control. His eyes gleam as he stares at the scene with pure rage and contempt. He then orders the arrest of the Pope and all his followers. Surrounded, the Pope says this is strange and that she is his daughter. The prince says he respected him and gave him time, but he made foolish choices. Without hesitation, he turns to his knight and orders him to kill the Pope. The knight questions the order, saying he might still be hiding the saint. He replies that if the Pope hasn't revealed her, it's because he's confident. With a cold gaze, he says he will not be swayed by religion. Repeating the order, he commands Caliban to kill him without further hesitation. The knight just stares at him, looking nervous about the order he received. Preparing to strike, he says, this is the result of the Pope's own actions. Desperate, the Pope shouts, insisting that she really is his daughter. But the knight says that if that were true, the crest would be complete. Suddenly, other sister appears and blocks the sword before it strikes. Unable to believe his eyes, the Pope just stares at the scene in shock. With a bloodied sword in her hands, she stands in front of her father. Seeing this, the Pope and the knight are both completely paralyzed with surprise. He then asks why she would go so far for a useless father. With blood on her face, she replies that it wasn't just because of him. Pointing a dagger at him, she says that a meaningless life isn't worth living. She continues saying that's why she wished for her sister to live. Turning her back, she remarks that perhaps she is being punished for everything. From a distance, Leon watches the entire situation unfold with a serious gaze. Using some kind of magic, he appears in a portal to observe the scene. Just then, the dead sister's energy seems to transfer to the one who survived. Reflecting on what he's seen, he seems to reach an important conclusion. He then realizes that the wrong person was the one being punished. Shocked, the Pope asks what she means by punishment. She then accuses him, saying he's no different from the others. Confused, he asks what she's talking about. Breaking out in a cold sweat, he just stares at her, unable to believe her words. Covered in blood, she reveals they were never daughters to him. Crying, she tells them to admit the truth and find peace in the end. With a furious glare, she screams that he never had any daughters. She says this is the only punishment she can give him. Desperate, he screams, calling for his daughter as she collapses to the ground. Kneeling beside her, he holds her, unable to believe what just happened. Meanwhile, the body on the pyre continues to burn intensely. Watching Leon, Marba seems to realize what he's about to do. He then asks his master if he's not going to put a stop to this. Holding the book, he begins to summon the two who lost their lives. Surprised by his action, Carlene just screams, not understanding the spell. With his eyes closed, he declares that their duty is not yet over. At that moment, the eye on the book begins to glow intensely with power. A great energy then erupts, manifesting powerfully behind Leon. In disbelief, Carlene says that this is the true power of necromancy. Two spheres of energy, one gold and one purple, appear in the room. The two energies fly around the area, circling the carriage. Asking if they wish to continue living, he summons them back. The spheres then transform, revealing the forms of the two sisters. He says that if they wish to live even as the dead, he can help. With a determined look, he announces that he will gladly accept their request. Then chains of energy bind the two, sealing the pact between them. Agreeing to the offer, she asks what they need to do in return. He then explains that they will need to work for him from now on. One of them replies that this is fair and that it would be suspicious otherwise. Closing his eyes, he says he'll take that as a done deal. With the book in hand, he prepares to seal the contract with them. Looking at them, he asks if they are prepared to swear their loyalty. The two look at each other for a moment, smiling. With their eyes closed, they agree to accept Leon's proposal. The eye on the book then glows, indicating the pact has been sealed. With the contract complete, purple energy envelopes Leon's body. Holding the book, he wishes for them to find what they were looking for. With a sincere look, he hopes that the value they seek will rest in their hands. Meanwhile, the Pope remains seated, holding his daughter's body in his arms. Outside, the prince and the knight watch the surviving nun. The knight comments that he felt a powerful magical force nearby. He wonders if there's another faction there besides the prince. Elsewhere, Leon walks down a corridor holding the magic book. With a serious expression, he seems focused on his next task. Furious, Marba scolds him for using subjugation without consulting him first. Confused, Leon says that since he saved them, he should get some compensation. Carlene then comments that he's amazing in more ways than one. Marbus explains that to create mindless undead, a certain process is required. He continues, saying it's a delicate procedure for perfect control. Leon then asks how one subjugates beings with intelligence and free will. The answer is that you must persuade souls with regrets to obey. He explains that the necromancer helps resolve their regrets in exchange for power. This process is known by another name, subjugation. Understanding the logic, he says it's about resolving life's regrets. Marba confirms, saying that the greater the regret, the greater the power. He then asks Leon to remember that necromancers do not exploit the dead. With a serious look, Leon replies that yes, he will remember that. Back in the present, as Marbus's heir, he calls out their names. He asks for Heaven and Helen to answer the necromancer's call. At that, two spheres of energy appear, floating in the carriage's air. The two spheres of energy then merge, forming a single light. The energy dissipates, revealing a single woman where the two had been. Leon and Marbus watch the scene, seemingly understanding what happened. Marbus explains that they were destined to be one body from the very beginning. Richel and Carlene agree, finding the situation both fascinating and sensible. The silver-haired boy says the atmosphere feels strangely different. Confused, Leon asks if she is Heaven or Helen now. With her eyes closed, she smiles as a mark appears on her forehead. She then replies that for the moment she is Heaven, the nun. Leon asks if she can switch at any time and she confirms it, but she warns him that there's a problem with her new condition. Suddenly, the energy around her shifts, seeming darker. Her eyes snap open, revealing a completely different personality. Complaining, she asks if she'll have to serve such a rigid master. Rachel notices the change, saying that Helen's hidden personality has emerged. With a gesture, she tells Rachel to shut up and stay out of it. Leon then asks what the twin sisters are actually good at. He warns that if they're useless, he'll have to send them back. With a nervous smile, she says he says scary things so casually. She replies that they can do many things to satisfy him as their master. Approaching him, she places a hand on his shoulder, looking him in the eyes. Pulling him close, she embraces him, surprising everyone in the room. She stares at him up close, a seductive smile on her face. With their faces close, she asks if something like this is also possible. On the wall, a blue flag with gray and white details is hanging. The guildmaster says the job is done, but she looks worried. Looking at her, Leon says he didn't think it would be resolved this way. Carlene says the Pope agreed, so they just need to get paid. With a hand on her forehead, she sighs, looking exhausted by the situation. Richel comments that he's incredible in many ways, impressed by what he saw. He continues, saying that raising the daughter as an undead in front of her father was cruel. She scolds him, asking where he's looking, and reaffirms her loyalty. Embarrassed, he looks away, trying to avoid a confrontation with her. Marba complains about her attitude, but Leon says he's used to it. The silver-haired boy says it's good to be alive, even if he's not sure. The guildmaster officially recognizes him as the owner of the silver emblem. She says she'll send the payment, but Leon asks if this is the end. She replies that she'll contact him if she gets a new job for him. Carlene tells him not to worry as she's as discreet as she looks. Smiling, she says that as long as they keep the payments coming, everything is fine. Rochelle complains about her acting sweet for no apparent reason. Pointing her gun, she threatens him, leaving him completely terrified. Marbus then says that in any case, it's time for them to go. He suggests they check what kind of power the twins have now. Carlene then asked Penelia to help a little more with the mission. Reluctantly, she agrees, pouring a liquid into a bowl. Changing scenes, the knight walks up the stairs toward the throne. He reports that the Pope has refused to eat or drink and is going mad. The prince says the shock of losing his daughters must have been immense. Next to the emperor, he continues to watch the scene with contempt. The emperor complains about the disgrace, saying they lost their chance to have the saint. He wonders when the next prophecy will come to guide them. Asking for another chance, the knight promises to dedicate himself to the empire. The prince says he'd better deliver and changes the subject. The prince asks if they found the whereabouts of the dark mage yet. The knight replies that regrettably, they still haven't found him. He explains that the candidate's souls vanished midway. He continues, saying that no known mage has such magical control. Looking to the side, the prince ponders the possibility of it being a necromancer. In a forest, the group gathers to discuss their next steps. The guildmaster turns to Leon, looking ready for the next stage. She asks what ability his undead awakened with the resurrection. He says he'll show her directly and asks her to summon an opponent. With a focused look, he says that something mid-level should do. He says he'll start by checking the older sister's abilities. With her eyes closed, she releases a golden energy, preparing herself. She then opens her eyes, her energy glowing brightly around her. Apologizing, she says her sister was rude to him. With her hands together, she smiles and says she's ready for the test. With a wave of her hand, the guild master summons the opponents. From the ground, forest trolls emerge ready for battle. Looking at the creature, Ritual recognizes the type of monster they're facing. He comments that their regeneration will make the fight difficult for her. Carlene says that in any case, the family head has already shown enough. The silver-haired boy says he believes in the family head, asking if she can handle it. Leon watches her closely. She then charges forward, running toward the trolls for combat. Using the book, Leon seems to conjure a weapon for her to use. Holding a large staff, she prepares to attack the monsters. One of the trolls glares at her, its red eyes glowing with rage. With a powerful blow, she strikes one of the trolls with all her might. Holding Marba, the man comments that she seems strong but dangerous. With another blow, she mercilessly crushes the head of one of the trolls. After the fight, the bodies of the defeated trolls lie on the ground. Looking back, she smiles, awaiting her master's evaluation. He then says she seems to be decently usable for combat. With a purple energy, he says to leave the rest to Helen. Suddenly, her personality changes with a different mark on her forehead. Smiling, she says her chance to prove her worth has finally come. Looking at the trolls, she says she can now show her usefulness. With a magical chain, she rushes toward them at high speed. She says that arrogant monsters like them need some proper discipline. Her eyes glow as she prepares for the devastating attack. With the chain, she attacks the trolls, causing a large purple explosion. Afterwards, she stomps on the head of one of the trolls, crushing it into the ground. Winking, she asks if he doesn't want to die for their love. The group just watches the scene, surprised by the change in personality. Marbus concludes that no matter how you look at it, they're all insane. Back in the city, the flag of House Marbus hangs on the walls. Tired, Leon remarks that they've finally made it back home. Marbus says they've settled everything and gained some decent power. Agreeing, Leon says he feels like he's grown as a necromancer. The silver-haired boy regrets that the two of them left first. Smiling, Rachel says she's happy a new star has joined the school. Carlene then reminds him that he still owes her money. The blonde man approaches Leon, seeming to say goodbye to the group. Shaking hands, he asks if the two of them are leaving already. Rachel confirms, saying they need to check on other debtors out there. She then asks if his name was Valthor, and he confirms. Praising him, she says he has impressive talent, but it's overshadowed. Rachel says she hopes she never has to meet the commander of the lunatics. Curious, Leon asks why he's so afraid of meeting him. With a nervous smile, he replies that it's because he's a monster. He continues, saying that she's also a monster on another level. He says Valthor's talent is real and that he'll get what he wants. Embarrassed, he thanks everyone, saying he's not used to compliments. Leon says he'll become an excellent servant in the future. He continues, assuring them that he'll grow more than they expect. Laughing, Rachel says that confident attitude suits a family head. Leon agrees with the idea, accepting their hopeful farewell. As he leaves, he warns him that he's linked him to the guild and expects him to pay. With a downcast expression, Leon just nods silently. Rachel complains that he's a killjoy on such a good day. Suddenly, Carlene points her gun at him, telling him to shut up. She holds him, saying that having a chatterbox around wouldn't be good. Looking at Leon, she hopes he'll be even stronger next time. With a nod, Leon says goodbye, watching the group leave. He watches as Rochelle and Carlene walk away through the forest. Upon returning, Leon and his companions find a crowd in the city. The crowd celebrates, thanking him for not abandoning them there. Confused, he just asks what's going on. Suddenly, Pullen runs toward him, crying and shouting his name. Surprised, he just calls his name, confused by his reaction. At that moment, he takes a heavy blow to the head, falling to his knees. A woman scolds him, asking where he's been all this time. Crouched on the ground, he protects himself, unable to see who attacked him. Lifting his gaze, he recognizes her, calling her Diana, his sister. His vassals rush to help him, asking if he's okay. Marbus suggests they go inside first, and Leon agrees. He then remarks that she's the next head of the noble Berisha family. Inside a room, everyone gathers around a large table. Explaining the situation, he says she's an excellent spirit summoner. Praising its master, the creature says he is capable and has a beautiful lady. Turning to Marbus, she says she needs a demon's license. She continues, saying that the fact Marbus is traveling with Leon is hard to understand. With a smile, Marbus just says, that's how things happened. The other vassals also agree, saying that's how it happened. The dark creature also confirms the story, a glint in its eyes. The silver-haired boy apologizes, saying that's what he told them. She then wonders why Leon always gets mixed up in things like this. She scolds him for leaving the house alone at a time like this, apologizing. He says everyone thought he had abandoned them. She remarks that they said he'd be back soon, so she waited. He then asks if she needs anything from him right now. With a serious expression, she stares at him, seeming to have a request. She lowers her head, looking worried about their current situation. She says there isn't much time left, explaining she came to check on him. She then asks him to come closer for a second. With a flick to his forehead, she says it's a punishment for forgetting. Surprised, he asks if it's what he thinks it is, and she confirms. She reveals there will be a banquet where all the noble families will gather. Looking at him, she informs him that he'll have to be her partner. The scene changes, showing the facade of a large luxurious building. Lying in bed, a white-haired boy is woken up by his butler. He informs him that the nobles' banquet will begin soon. Complaining, he says he sees no reason to go if his brothers are already going. The butler explains that it's a meeting of the three great noble houses. He continues, saying it's a chance to get rid of the problem child label. Sighing, he gets out of bed, seeming annoyed by the idea. With a bored expression, he complains that this is a drag. Pullen helps Leon get ready for the event. With a serious look, he seems to be thinking about something important. A purple-haired woman named Diana is introduced in the hall. She is the next head of House Vareksha and also his fiancée. Looking at her, he wonders if he really needs to attend the event. She complains, saying she thought he was loyal to just one woman. Grabbing him by the collar, she asks if he's going to marry someone like her. He agrees it's true, but simply continues to watch her in silence. The dark creature yells, asking if this is some kind of field trip. Laughing, Pullen just says he will explain the situation to them. He explains that the two are opposites and fight whenever they meet. He asks her to please let go of his collar. She says she thought becoming head would have changed him, but he's still the same. He replies that people shouldn't change so easily. Annoyed, she asks him to stop worrying the people of the territory. Breaking into a cold sweat, she seems to realize something, becoming speechless for a moment. In a memory, Leon appears alone under a heavy downpour. Another scene shows a pool of blood forming on the dark ground. Back in the present, she just apologizes with a sad expression. He says she has no reason to apologize as her father had no regrets. With his arms crossed, he continues saying he died protecting what he wanted. Startled, she just stares at him, unable to say a word. She says he's incredible, but it's better if he doesn't go to the event. He replies that the house restored its dignity by winning the war. He says he's aware of that, but other families still look down on them. With a determined look, he says he will do whatever it takes to protect the family. The two vassals celebrate, saying their master is finally being recognized. Resolute, he announces he will attend the meeting for everyone's sake. The scene changes to a grand ballroom filled with conversing nobles. People laugh and drink, enjoying the party in their elegant attire. At a table, the prince chats with other nobles. Enjoying the party, a man asks if it's true that Sylvester lost the territorial war. Another then asks who they were fighting against in the battle. With a serious expression, he reveals they fought against House Marbus. Surprised, he says they were a dying ducal family with no power. With a wave of his hand, he seems confident in his words and information. Hand in hand, Leon and Diana arrive at the hall, drawing everyone's attention. He comments that the place is noisier than he expected. Holding his hand, she blushes, looking nervous about the situation. She then says that remaining composed is part of being a family head. Thanking her, he says he now understands what he needs to do. She thinks to herself that she's known him since he was young, but now he seems shaken. He then asks if the others will be okay without his help. Outside, the two vassals look confident and ready for action. She says that although he seems mature, he's still just a 14-year-old boy. He says that, in terms of rank, he's higher because he's the head. Suddenly, a man approaches him asking if he is the head. With a smile, the silver-haired man stares at him curiously. Leon confirms that he is and asks what he wants with him. He says it's nothing much while thinking that he defeated Alan. Laughing, he says he heard an outrageous story about him winning. Leon then confirms that the story he heard is true. Surprised, the man just stares at him, unable to believe the answer. Diana asks if he's acting like a brat just because of her. He says he just can't picture the scene, laughing at the situation. He asks how he won, and Leon replies that he killed him. Not understanding, he asks Leon to repeat what he just said. With his eyes glowing, he says he killed Alan as the head of House Marbus. He continues, saying it's not easy to show the process, but he can. Looking back, he says that if he makes an enemy of his house, he'll see for himself. His threat leaves Diana completely paralyzed, not knowing how to react. Even Marbus on the floor says his master is completely insane. Meanwhile, the white-haired boy watches the group walk away. After watching them, he then picks up a glass of wine from the table. With a smile on his face, he now seems much more interested in him.